again, and there is Smith roaming free, breaks a tackle. Ohio State strikes quickly from 45 yards.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Second and short, play action, leg way in trouble. Steps up and throws deep. It's caught. Badger.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
He's got to have it right now, and they take a downfield shot. And the catch is made. It's Ryan Williams, still spinning free. Touchdown Alabama, they answer in one play.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Levitt going to escape from harm and do more than that. Levitt lunging, leaping, touchdown, Sun Devils.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Jeremiah Love breaks free. Jeremiah Love trying to go 98. Touchdown! What a run in the first touchdown of the 12-team playoff.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on a Friday afternoon. It is, February the 21st. We will get to a lot of the different news in college sports and athletics, football, and basketball momentarily. We got a great guest lineup today, and we start right off the top with Baylor National Championship basketball coach Scott Drew that joins Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. Scott, thank you very much. I know you're about to hop on a plane for Colorado, back-to-back road games against the Buffaloes and then Cincinnati. With the way your lineup is trying to gel with the small lineup and really not a lot of depth, is that something that could actually be more successful in a tournament situation than it is during a regular season?
I like your positivity. Definitely anything that is different gives you an advantage. I would also think that when you have a smaller lineup, it's you can develop chemistry quicker and find different things that you can do to just put people in better positions. And if you look at it, you're just getting the 8 guys, Central Florida, then you lose Josh. You play Houston right away. You have 1 week to work on some things. Now we've had a second week. You start to get some lineup data, who plays well with who, what lineups you need to probably stay away from, things you can incorporate to take advantage of mismatches. So you can add to the playbook. And if we don't get anyone else injured, I'd be surprised if we don't just keep continuing to improve. Doesn't guarantee we'll win every game, but I think we will be a better team, and our guys will be in better position to be successful. The more we know just what to expect from them, they know what to expect from each other.
How hard is it? You mentioned it's easier for a smaller lineup than a bigger lineup. Why is that in particular?
You look at it in most college basketball seasons, people start out playing 10, 11 the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, you're at 8, maybe 7, maybe 9. But everybody kind of shrinks things down, and then when you shrink things down, people get used to being in with certain people. You know what plays work with who, and what defenses work best with who, and you can start to play to people's strengths. And then you can find out also, like, hey, this lineup really doesn't work, or this defense with this lineup doesn't work, or and then last but not least, I think the guys get more confidence with each other. Like, I know when I drive, this is where he's going because I've played with him. And again, the current team we have, no one really played with Langston until recently because even in practice, he was when he came back for that short period of time was so limited that the chemistry is really just now being able to start to develop. And Jalen getting healthier. Yesterday we had good practice. I thought we really got better yesterday, and that's great. And unfortunately, we just didn't have those all summer and all fall.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said this is kind of the second week with who you are now since the injury to Josh. And do you kind of see, although you got to see what happens tomorrow afternoon in Boulder, but do you see a little bit of that, well, this is better, this is better, this is better?
I do, but as you know, the exam is the test. It tells you really what you see and what you know, and so you can study for a final, think things are going well, and then not do well on that final exam. So our games are our final exam. We figure it out based on that. But obviously, as a staff, I know we feel much more prepared. I think our guys feel much more prepared. I think we have a better game plan just because you know what you have. And again, it wasn't just Josh being out. It was Langston coming in. It was Jalen coming back and Jeremy coming back and just starting to figure all that stuff out.
Scott, Norchad during this stretch has been kind of something to watch in that all of a sudden, he had kind of one role earlier in the year when Josh was here, and then all of a sudden, like, you're the only forward, and that can maybe break some guys, but it appears that he has embraced it very well.
Yeah, one thing you love about Norchad is he really competes to win. He cares about his teammates, and you're never going to question his playing and his motor. And like when he jumped over the scores table, I mean, it's easy to cheer for a guy that you see is giving everything that he has. And you can go to bed at night knowing that whatever he can do to help affect winning, he's going to do. And the big thing is he's done a great job staying out of foul trouble and really embracing trying to make sure that he didn't pick up two quick ones like he did the first time we played Arizona in the first minute.
What is, as far as the pecking order of who is the most outspoken player with the transfer and all of that, who is the one that is the guy that's not afraid to bark if he needs to bark?
Well, I think that's also been hard to put together from the standpoint. We haven't had the same group together, so you can actually get a pecking order. At the same time, I do feel that we have several guys that's kind of more by committee. In years past, it would be, hey, it's easy to know. Like last year, Ray J, everybody kind of listened to what he had to say. But this year, I would think. VJ is as a freshman is never bashful to share what he thinks, and I love that about him. And he does it in a good way, and it's about winning in a caring way. Obviously, Jeremy and Norchad come from Final Four programs, so they have that experience. Langston's the longest here, so he brings some of that experience. And it's hard sometimes to be a leader too when you're not around all the time, and that's where Langston spends so much time rehabbing, not traveling with the team sometimes when you're not playing. It's just hard to get that chemistry. And again, I think as we go, we'll continue to get better and better with all of this.
Scott Drew with us on 365 Sports about to board a flight to get to Colorado.
The schedule in the Big 12 is never easy, Scott, but what do you think about the way your team has come through? Really, at this point, the meatiest part of the schedule the last couple weeks, dealing with all the things that they've had to deal with injury-wise.
Every win's a great win in the Big 12, and you look at our analytics, I think we have a lot of positives and a lot of good things. At the same time, you have chances each and every night for opportunities to improve your position with postseason and the chance to make sure you're in postseason. And with us, you look at the league so often when you play, teams matter. They might have a key guy out. They might be, like K-State recently is a lot different team than they were earlier in the year. Utah's a much different team now than they were. And Colorado is, if you look at all their scores, they've had so many games that were within 1-2 possessions with 5 minutes to go. So they've gotten better. Cincinnati right now is playing better than they were early in the year. So a lot of that depends on when you play guys, what they're going through, injuries, whatnot. Central Florida started out a little hotter, and they've kind of tapered off now. So, it's like we got to be ready to go this week. And the last game Tyler had at home, they won. play Houston down to the wire at home, and we got to go there and make sure we're ready to go and put our best foot forward.
I have been fortunate to take a trip with you guys to Ames many years ago to kind of see Hilton Coliseum, the atmosphere of what you wanted to build at Baylor. And it's kind of there's very little downtime. You got to keep everybody occupied. Has that changed much with where you are maybe a decade later when it comes to road trips?
No, actually, I mean, that's we'll land, we'll go shoot at the arena, we'll come back, we'll eat, meet, go to bed, get up, film, scout, walk through, shoot around, pregame prep, play, board the plane, come back. I mean, there's really not much time to I mean, I know you could come up there and go skiing if you wanted early in the morning, but unfortunately, we'll I think 8 to 9 is our shoot around time, and you're ripping and running all day.
All right, one more thing, and then Paul might have a final question, and we appreciate your time with the schedule the way it is. The tournament, to me, at where it is at 68, with the play-in games, et cetera, seems to be perfect. But there's always more money needed, more revenue, whatever. What are your thoughts about extending the tournament past 68? Because that obviously is on the table.
Yeah. I'm a little bit biased from the standpoint growing up at Valparaiso University in the one bid league, and a lot of coaches come from that. And we were so blessed to go to the tournament, but most people that played in our league never had an opportunity. And I know basketball and football, there's a lot of similarities. And one of the things in football, so many more people go to bowl games. And at the end of the day, players, they get a once in a lifetime experience playing college basketball for most of them, and then they're done playing afterwards, and a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. It's called March Madness for a reason. Nobody can get past the first weekend with a perfect bracket. So we can't say, well, if we put more teams in, they're not worthy or it's not going to be good games. I just think from the other side of it, if there's a little Smoky running around and you wanted him to, he finished 2 spots outside, and you're like, man, I really want my grandson to have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, because that's a memory he's going to remember the rest of his life. And with just 68 teams, the percentage is so much lower than football. I think bowls are great. I think playoffs are great. And I think those memories are part of all the hard work and everything you go through. So I'm giving a long version, but I would like more teams so more college students and athletes could have those memories. And at the same time, I'd like it for more coaches and other people that work really hard that maybe never have a chance to make the tournament to get in. And that's why my answer is what it is. Because if you're us, you would say you want less teams because you want to win 6 games to win it all instead of playing 7 or 8, you know?
Yep.
So just to read into what you said a little bit, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You would be in favor of it if those expansions were to to expand for the one bid leagues, not for the Power Four, so to speak.
It would be for everyone. The best, like, I mean, if you had 10, 12 teams, I mean, I'm sure you're going to get some at the mid, you're going to get some at the what, like, I mean, what I wanted really a long time ago was when we were at 64, I said every league conference winner should get a bid, and every conference tournament winner should get a bid. And then you just there is no play-in games. You got to win 7 to win it all. And now you take it up from 64, you double that, and it's 128. So it's one additional game, but now you reward people that won their conference, like in the Ivy League or the Valley, that get upset in a conference tournament. So you would have more mid-majors, and then you would have more high majors that are deserving as well. And then it's fair. Everybody has 7. Now, again, what's great about this is everyone has opinions. And I always say in coaching, there's a lot of ways to get to 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 plus 1 equals 4. 5 minus 1 equals 4. So everybody's entitled, and I'm not saying mine's right. That's just what you asked for it. I would probably do 7 games, 128, and everybody gets in. If you win your league, you get that bid. If you win your tournament, you get that bid. If it's the same team, well, then there's another at large available.
That does make some sense. It gives us a different perspective from a coach and program point of view. Scott, thank you. Good luck in Boulder. Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Scott Drew, head coach of Baylor basketball, on the road against Colorado. Then they are on the road against Cincinnati. And then, of course, close out the regular season. Next thing you know, everyone's going to be in Kansas City. And in the men's basketball league, Houston is hosting game day tomorrow. And because of the weather, they're going to actually open up the parking lots around the arena at 5:30 tomorrow morning. And then they will open the gates and allow people to get in to be a part of game day at 7 o'clock tomorrow. A 2-game lead for the Cougars. And, of course, there are 5 games to go. They're getting close to where they're about to be in a position to wrap things up. Houston and college game day tomorrow. All right, let's go now to some of the headlines from today. And we start with something that I'd say out of 365 days a year and about 250 or so shows a year, hockey is not on the table. Doesn't mean that some of you would like to have less or more of it. If you have less of it, I don't know how you can. But the emotions of country against country. Here's a couple of tweets from Canada winning in overtime 3-2. It's kind of crazy that the NHL created an exhibition game that was more compelling and seemingly higher stakes than any NBA game in the last decade. And main principle was just, what if our players take pride in their performance? Now, that's probably not fair in many ways to the NBA, but I have seen that at least thought over the last 2 to 3 days.
Craig?
Yeah, I think this is stemming in part from PK Subban's discussion on ESPN. I think this is a conversation that's being really distorted, honestly. I saw PK Subban's commentary, and I agree with what a lot of what he had to say in terms of like the passion of the hockey players and the pride for their country. But we're comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing, I think, with PK Subban talking about the NBA, this national, in-season, instead of the All-Star Game tournament for a lot of hockey players who have not been able to represent their countries for a while. And it's a brand new venture, and there's also this political backdrop that is supercharged between the U.S. and Canada right now. There's like a lot of elements of the rarity of this, the newness of this, the current just backdrop of this that made this particular U.S.-Canada matchup and the win prior by the U.S. Because let's face it, if Canada had won game 1, like the U.S. isn't even in the game, and we don't care.
Yeah.
We don't care. U.S. hockey fans, the true Garrett, they probably care. But let's face it, 99% of the people commenting do not care if U.S. doesn't win that game the other night, right? So, hey, they brought in a big audience. That's fine. But PK Subban's talking about representing your country and then talking about the NBA and the lack of caring and all that. But he's definitely not talking about them representing their country. I mean, there's a documentary out on Netflix right now that is fairly new that shows you Team USA at the Olympics and how much it matters to Kevin Durant and how much it matters to LeBron James and how much it matters to these guys. So I think if you want to talk about the NBA regular season, then that's a valid comparison. But to compare the NBA regular season, which, yes, is in many ways pointless and is bad basketball and is just, I mean, it's mind-numbingly just kind of stupid how far they're trying to reach to try and make that entertaining. That's not a fair comparison for the first ever in-season hockey tournament between nations with all of these different elements at play. That is so not the same comparison. So if you wanted to compare the NBA doing the same thing like a lot of people now want them to do, and Team USA being out there and just being like, whatever, like, then that'd be a valid comparison. But to compare, like, game 63 for the Pistons and them lollygagging around because they're millionaires versus, like, Team Canada and U.S. in the heat of this hockey, that's not the same thing, guys. That is not the same thing. So it's valid that the NBA regular season needs some spicing up and a little bit of pride to it. But I don't think that's the same as, like, Team Canada and Team USA going out on the ice.
Is he comparing it to the regular season of the NBA or the All-Star weekend?
I think he's comparing it. Yeah, I think he's comparing it to just the NBA overall. And maybe the All-Star weekend, too.
And I think the basis of it is the All-Star weekend. But you're also – so, yeah, that's not the same as U.S. versus Canada.
No. And look, hockey, I don't want to say they had a really good idea. They needed to do a better job of promoting their game. And guess what? For that 99% of people who are commenting who have no idea, it's just like the people who weren't watching women's basketball before Caitlin Clark came in. Look, if they can retain 10% of that audience, that's a 10% bump.
Yeah.
And if they can do that every year, that's good.
The WNBA is talking about expansion now because Caitlin Clark brought so much popularity.
Exactly. So if they can do that, and that's for the league office, that's why this was a stroke of genius, because I'm like, oh, well, now I'll watch if they do this every year, I'll watch the All-Star weekend every year. There might be hockey fans who are like, I don't give a crap about the All-Star. Like, I don't care how many shots Jared McDavid can make through a hole in in a wooden board. Like Connor McDavid, I don't care about that. I don't care how fast Kachuk can skate.
Right.
Compared. Like, that's not hockey. That's just random stuff. But if you do something like this, and then what I do agree with PK about, and you'll see the clip here, is that hockey is and maybe some people miss this. Hockey is just a game by its very nature that when you're going to step out there, if you half-ass it, you're going to the dentist at best.
Yeah, or you're going to get injured. Yeah.
Now you can go out in a basketball game, and believe me, I've seen NBA college games where you're watching a team totally half-ass it, and nothing bad happens physically to them. They just lose or they don't win the way that they should, but nobody loses a tooth. Nobody gets a concussion. So the nature of the game's a little bit different. But overall, I kind of agree with what he's saying because, or at least from the perspective of NBA players have to make it look like they want to be there most nights, and I don't think that's the perception that the fans have is that.
I think that one thing that's also happened, and Craig, is how many NBA players don't play as much or as often before, and that might be kind of in some people's heads or their opinions because of that too.
No, I think his base point is correct. I just don't think he delivered it if you're actually listening to exactly what he said, at least for me when I listened to it a couple times. I just think comparing this proud event that is brand new and, again, something that we haven't seen before and haven't seen for a while in terms of some of the matchups, comparing that to we know it sucks NBA All-Star Weekend or the game itself is really the base criticism. I just think that's not really an apples-to-apples comparison. But him drilling down on the fact that every regular season game in hockey, those guys go out there and play their hearts out because that's the base of the game. Like, that's, I think, really what his driving home point was. But it lost me a little when he started trying to compare, like, this particular event and using it as, like, some gotcha against the NBA because, let's face it, the NHL has to go out and actually prove this mattered. It's mattered for, like, a week in terms of these casual fans. But do now more people watch the Sharks and the Islanders as a result of this? Or is it going to be the NHL that we typically don't talk about?
Good point.
I mean, because this is very much an in-the-moment type of thing.
And
but
we
now
do that a lot, though.
But now that Team USA lost, like, are you watching Rangers versus Predators because of hockey's, like, suddenly hooked you in? Or is that going to be kind of like just over here, much like Cavaliers Celtics is kind of usually over here for you if you're not a big NBA fan. But I do think he has valid points. Like I said, I just don't think it's a completely perfect comparison.
It's not apples to apples.
No. And so that's where I thought he was a little bit lost in the messaging. But I got what he was trying to say. And I do agree that if your main point is that in the NHL regular season, the all-star stuff notwithstanding, those guys don't have any nights off. And if they do, it's because they are not able to even go. Versus the NBA where you're a week into the season and guys are already sitting out because of load management that make $100 million. I'm absolutely 100% with him. The NBA is soft. It is in terms of the amount of just massaging of players and all of the nights off and all of that. And I understand you're protecting your investment, but let's face it, guys. Like, it's gotten way over the top in terms of, like, stars like barely playing half the time.
Yeah. Taking
multiple games off for like a tweaked ankle. Like, that would never happen in the NHL. So I do agree with him there. But I do think fire up Netflix and go watch the Team USA documentary and tell me that the best basketball players in the world do not care about playing for Team USA, and I will call you a liar because there's no way you walk away from that feeling that way. So I think they care. I think if you did something similar, it would get a similar response. But yes, the regular season effort or lack thereof is absolutely a black mark right now and something that I feel is hurting that sport.
And a lot of the guys who are the stars that sit out most of the time were not on that Olympic team.
A lot of them
I
were.
mean, some
LeBron,
I mean, Joe
KD.
Embiid, yeah. But
Yeah.
But
I don't know if it was before or was it when the Spurs were always trying to give Duncan.
It's their fault.
That's what started it.
It's their fault. It's Greg Popovich's fault.
It was probably something that made sense, but they could have contained it a little bit quicker. And now, so all right, you want to play that with DK? Or we pretty much we don't
PK.
need to. PK Subban, by the way, who was discussing what the sport of hockey has now because of what we've seen. And again, this is a little bit different than what we would talk about most of the time, all the time. Garrett loves hockey. I watched it. I probably otherwise would not have. It had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that I'm going to watch it. There wasn't much else on last night, but I thought it was exciting enough to watch. And, of course, Canada ends up winning the game with McDavid's goal in overtime. Here is PK Subban and what he sees as the difference.
Giannis says, hey, I think what we should do is, let's say, the world take on the American players in the NBA. Kind of somewhat sort of what are you doing in the NHL? What do you think?
Well, listen, hockey's a different sport from the NBA. You can't compare the cultures because of the way the game is played. You can step on an NBA floor and go through the emotions. You can't do that in hockey. You can't. Like, the culture of our sport, you have to play it with passion. You have to be willing to fight. You have to be willing to leave it on the ice. That's what fans are investing in. So for us, when we charge $1,500 for a ticket to come to fans know what they're getting. Cale Makar, the best defenseman in the world, wasn't in the lineup for this game. This was the most viewed game that we've had in years. And you see it, it's because it's not just based on the skill and talent. It's based on the pride, honor, playing for the guy next to you. I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? What are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. Are you hurt or are you injured? There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. We play injured. That is the culture of the sport. It's always been that way. So you want to talk about the business, the CBA, fans get all of that. But what do fans resonate with? They resonate with what's real. You got to fight sometimes for your country. You got to compete. You got to go out there and leave it on the ice because those people are paying the price of admission. So fans know whether our stars are on the ice or not, they're getting their money's worth. The NBA has that issue that they got to work on. You got to create a better culture for your players. It starts with the leaders. This issue, there was no issue when Jordan was around. There was no issue when Kobe was around. There's no issue when Sidney Crosby's around. There's no issue when Wayne Gretzky was around because those are true leaders. They lead by example. Sidney Crosby, Hockey Canada, those players, both Canada and U.S., it was the players that did that for the four nations. That's not the league. The league set it up, but the players went out there and decided and said, you know what, boys? We're all in. When is the NBA going to do that? Because, I haven't sat down and watched the NBA consistently since Kobe. Since Kobe has died, I have not sat down and watched the NBA consistently. I love basketball. Love the players. I think LeBron's great. I think KD's great. Steph Curry. Love watching them. But you got to be on the court. You got to be there, and when you're there, you got to go all in. The fans got to feel that they're getting their money's worth. And right now, there's a big difference between what the NHL's doing with those events and what the NBA's doing. Four Nations works because the players are all in.
All right, so that's PK Subban, and first of all, I love his voice. Got a great voice to listen to, but his thoughts, and I'll go to the chat room in a minute to get a couple of things from you as far as feedback on what you think. But there's PK Subban and his thoughts about the difference.
It's also become just trendy lately to dunk on the NBA.
Yeah.
Like it's just trendy to do that. So I have my own complaints with the NBA. I'm turned off by it because of a trade that the team I used to root for just made, as much as anything. But I do still appreciate the athletes and the efforts. I think this now mass labeling of the league is getting a little bit out of hand. I think he was guilty of some of that there. I also think, again, he's comparing apples to oranges. I do think the NBA, as a result of what Popovich basically started, so if you want to point there, don't point at the players, point at the coach who began this and then all those that followed suit. But I do think there's a little bit of softness for sure. But I also think the NBA would kick their ass in a ratings contest. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's even close. I think you want to compare TV contracts. You want to compare popularity. You want to do a nations tournament. The NBA could do like a 10 nations tournament if they wanted to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I agree partially with what he says, but I don't think it's like the Grand Slam, hot take that some are making it out to be. But I do think it's something, if you're the NBA, I would be pissed about, and I would get a little defensive over. And I'll tell you what, go do your tournament, and we'll watch and see how hard these guys play. And I'll tell you what, the NBA might not want to do it as much because USA might go on like a 10-game losing streak with the way the NBA is set up right now. I'd be fascinated to see it. I mean, you joke.
No,
you know what the international team would have?
Yeah.
I mean, Giannis, Jokic, Doncic. I mean, and I could go for like another 15 guys. I mean, SGA. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Like, that would be some hellified basketball if you did Team USA versus the world. So I'm all for that because I think you talk about star-studded.
Yeah.
That would be incredible. And I do think players would care, just like they cared during the Olympics.
Yeah.
When they were representing their countries.
Well, and it was, if you've watched, before you watch Court of Gold, go back and watch the one about the team, the dream team that came back after they lost, and how Kobe Bryant infused the want to in them.
Yeah.
Because those guys are still playing, like the LeBrons and all that. Of all right, no, this matters in a different way. So yeah, I agree with you, Craig. I think they would ball harder in that scenario.
But maybe this is a little bit of a kick in the pants for them, although they've been getting a lot of kicks lately, and so we'll see if there's any sort of changes in the air. But I would be all for that type of all-star game, and I would be way more interested in watching that, knowing guys would care versus whatever they're doing now. Let's just toss it from the other side of the court in the middle of the first quarter just because we're playing grab ass basically, which is what it's kind of turned into in some ways. But yeah, that's a conversation I didn't suspect we'd be having. So congrats to everybody involved on bringing, whether it's positive or negative, attention to hockey and basketball. They're getting a lot more airtime hockey, certainly the past few days, and they've been accustomed to for a really long time.
It was fun to watch. It was a hell of a game. I thought that, and Garrett, you are a hockey guy. I'm our NASCAR guy. But here's, I thought the United States team dominated the late part of the third period, and I mean, they were peppering Canada. The goalie was fantastic, and it appeared like that seemed like that ended pretty quickly, but they seemed like they were constantly in Canada's face near their goal.
They were. They did a good job of forechecking there in the early on in the third period. I think once it went into overtime, though, I felt like the American team started pressing a little bit, and kind of what I was describing with them having to be disciplined in this game because of Canada's ability to capitalize on the power play situation. I think that's how overtime unfolded. I think if you look at the aggressiveness that Canada played with during the overtime, it was more like they were on the power play scenario, and they were able to get it done. Austin Matthews did step up, which was something that needed to be done, and he had 3 good shots during overtime. None of them were able to find the back of the net, but at the same time, he played well. Now, there's going to be the conversation about Matthew Tkachuk not being available and everything, but even if he was playing in that game, I still think Canada would have won. Now, I think the U.S. will use this as motivation, and in a couple of years when you're in the Olympics, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. won the Olympics.
All right, now where are they playing the next one? They're going it's overseas again, right?
I can't remember where it's at, but yeah.
Yeah, I watched every second of it, enjoyed it thoroughly. And again, part of it was looking over at who scored the winning goal, the best player in the entire league. I mean, so It wasn't about to me, it wasn't about anything that the Americans did or didn't do. It's Connor McDavid's going to Connor McDavid.
They were evenly matched.
I mean, he's going to go do amazing things. I just want to say one more thing about load management in the NBA. It started by Greg Popovich trying to give Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili a break on back-to-back nights when they were in their 30s, and it was never meant to be applied to a 23-year-old guy who was just a little bit tired.
Be like 12 games for an ankle sprain.
Yeah, exactly. It was never supposed to be that.
No, I agree with that.
So that was there are a lot of things that sound like good ideas, historically, and have unintended consequences, and that was certainly one of them.
No, I agree. I agree with his criticism in that way of the softness and some of the just it just doesn't matter. You're right. You're getting paid. I mean, tens of millions of dollars, and you're
The dudes who play 20 minutes a night make $8 million.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting paid enough to put out a little bit more during the regular season. They also play 82 games, so I don't know. Do you need to cut back? Would that make a difference? I don't know, but they do need to look at the game and the effort level because those guys are getting paid way too much money to be, in some cases, not all cases, because I think to paint broad brush is not fair to a lot of players who do play through a lot of that stuff and do play every night, and there are those guys.
Say what you will about LeBron, he's never been a guy who's accepted load management.
But, I mean,
he's going to go play.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, no, LeBron plays.
Well, he's also in his upper 30s, and so his.
But I mean, like now it's a little different.
Yeah.
But like even,
Yeah.
I mean, a couple years ago when they asked him, "How do you feel about load management?" He's like, "If I'm healthy, I'm going to play. I play basketball."
Well, you hope that's the way it is with everybody. But there are some players that you want to like. Luke is not playing in back-to-back games now. Of course, he's coming off that long stretch of an injury with Dallas, and then of course now. With the Lakers. The next four, Craig, go ahead. The next time they play will be in 2 years, 2026 in Milan, Italy. That will be the next site of the Four Nations tournament.
Yeah, so it's not even an every year thing. So, as much as hoopball is.
It's every other year.
Every other year.
It's 2025.
2026. No, I'm thinking that's the Winter Olympics. I don't know when they have the schedule for the next one. I'm looking at the international.
I thought I saw 28 earlier, but anyways, regardless,
whatever
they're
doing
doing
next year because there's Olympics, but yeah.
What?
They wouldn't do it next year because there's Olympics.
Right, yeah, they're not doing it next year.
And then, but I'm sure in 27 they would probably bring it back around.
Right, so technically I was right. They're not. Yeah. So anyways, regardless of whatever they're doing next year, it's not happening, I don't think, next year. We can triple check on that. And it was a great event. I said on Monday that I thought Canada would win, and they did. So not happy about that as an American, but kudos to the Canadians. I know that meant a lot to them. That's going to be one of their greatest sports wins of all time because of the background of it. And you know what? Deservedly so. So good win for them. Would have been incredible for the U.S., but I think you're excited about the future of U.S. hockey. And, again, for all the talking, I think hopefully it's a kick in the pants for the NBA. But at the same time, you're kicking up. You're not kicking down because your contracts, your ratings are paltry in comparison. So, we'll see if this carries over into something else or if we just revert back to really not many people paying as much attention now that the Four Nations is over. Because that'll be the real test for hockey and the NHL is do you get something from this like a Caitlin Clark effect type thing? Although that's not an apples-to-apples comparison either.
You're talking about the sport of hockey?
Yeah.
I don't think they will. I don't think.
Right, so that's why he's sitting there and, punching around and talking all this trash while you have the platform. I get it, but it's also you kind of realize, again, who you are as well. You're not bringing in nearly as much money, and so it's kind of a different culture in that way.
How many people who watched last night, whether it was for the Team USA or Canada or whatever, actually will watch another hockey game the rest of the year? A lot. I mean, hockey fans will. But I don't know if I will. Maybe I'll watch it when they get to the Stanley Cup Finals because I do that anyway.
If they get a 5% rate of return on this, then that's good for them.
Yep. Anything that's a bump.
Yeah.
Garrett, by the way, $3.65 super chat from a retired stockbroker. Damn it, boy, you give max info in less time on hockey.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you very much. All right, when we come back, we'll take a break here, and we do have some other sports headlines, including – I'm pissed off at my favorite college football program for canceling a series that they need to be playing. Maybe they're being smart here, where the Big Ten will host their media days, and a couple of other notes. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you. When you watch us, listen to us, whether it's on YouTube, 365 Sports, or also on Twitter at 365 Sports, and we're back in a moment. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. Dr. Petty can help you find out if some of what you're dealing with, if you have any of these symptoms, your sex drive's not the same, you're just mood and you don't have it. Something's going on. It might be your relationship. It might be something else, but it could be your testosterone level has dropped. Are you as focused? Are you as energetic? Is something missing with you? And you're pretty good shape, and you have a pretty decent diet, and you also might even be fit or close to it. Your testosterone level can affect all of that. And you can battle against it with all of what I just said. But testosterone level, when it drops, can affect you. 1 out of every 3 or 4 men have it. And Dr. Petty will set you up. Contact them, pettycliniclowt.com. Contact them. You can tell them I sent you. And they will then set you up to get your blood work. They will take care of that appointment and then get the results, your testosterone level, get back in touch with you if it's too low, and he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995 or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
I'll never give this.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
All right, so Pete Thamel, I think, was the first that had this. Eventually, a lot of people do that cover college football. Tennessee and Nebraska were scheduled to play in 2026 in Lincoln, 2027 in Knoxville. Nebraska was changing up their 2027 schedule because they are going to have more renovations and a lot of changes to Memorial Stadium, and they've put in just hundreds of millions of dollars with their complexes and much more. So they're changing that. So they wanted to go to 8 home games to make up for not having, like 80,000 or so their capacity in Lincoln. So they canceled those games. When I saw this as a Nebraska fan, I'm pissed. Play them. This is how you, again, I don't care if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC. These are the games that I think college football fans want to see. Now, then Danny White, who's the AD at Tennessee, he said, I want to make sure we correct it. Tennessee is not canceling this series. Nebraska did. We are disappointed. They didn't want to play these games, especially this close to 2026. Now, one of the other notes in this series is that they had signed this series to be played like 10 years ago, back in 16 and 17, and it was a 2006 agreement. That's when you had to do that a lot, like 10 years ahead of time, set up these future schedules. But Nebraska agreed Tennessee wanted to play a game inside Bristol Motor Speedway, and so they agreed to push the series back even further. I don't know if anyone saw this lately, but Alex Golish, the head football coach at USF in Tampa, said something on Twitter. I think it was to Danny White. What's up? Want to play in the Bay? Good. Yeah. If they're looking for a game, the Bulls of USF are interested in doing that.
USF they're doing the old Bobby Bowden thing of in the non-conference. We'll play Alabama, we'll play Tennessee. It's the only way that they're going to get the recognition that they need as they're trying to grow the program. Now, are they going to get stopped or beaten in most of these games? Yeah, but they gave Alabama all they wanted 2 years ago, and for 3 quarters this year, they did it again.
Yeah.
And then it was just too much depth-wise. But, yeah, do it. Go play them.
Hey, college football fans, I know we've been talking all this big talk about all these big games and how big games matter and SEC Big Ten and big ratings. Sorry, though, we can't possibly not make as much money. We have to cancel this game.
Yeah, and now
greedy, man, and running.
There are games now next year, and who knows who they are, even though rules in year 3. They play Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green. We've mentioned that before. They can be a problem.
Well, Bowling Green replaces them.
Yeah, and then North Dakota. That is not who they – it's stupid.
No, Bowling Green replaces them next year, and then Miami, Ohio replaces 27.
But the 26 schedule includes Miami of Ohio, I think, as well, doesn't it? Yeah. I believe it does.
Okay.
So you're playing them. You've got to play somebody, whether it's in the Big 12 or who's a part of the ACC or somebody within the SEC or somebody like Notre Dame. You got to do it. You used to. So there we are with that.
Well, I saw one article talking about them following the path of Indiana, the path of least resistance to the playoff, trying to play the least tough schedule that you can play, which I don't know their schedule like the back of my hand. You can't completely bulletproof your schedule. You're going to run into Ohio State or Michigan or whatever combination of, but that was one person's take at least was.
But these games don't hurt you.
No, not anymore, especially because losing one game doesn't matter. So, that was one perspective. The other perspective is, you need to recoup that money. I mean, however you feel about it, I think it sucks. I mean, that's a big game, and it does feel a little bit like Nebraska's running for kind of a BS reason, but I guess we'll see how that works.
The financial part of it, playing 8 home games, I understand making sense, but it is Ohio next year, not Miami of Ohio. That's Miami of Ohio replaces the game in 2027. Bowling Green
what I was
next
saying.
year, but they're playing Ohio, not Miami.
8 home games, huh?
Yeah,
got to have those 8 home games.
I've said my piece on it, and if Matt Rule was on with us, the next time he is, I'm going to bring it up.
Jeez, 8 home games. Wow.
Jed Fish. This is not something you have but Jed Fish, Washington's head coach. He thinks that college football should adapt the NFL calendar. We should literally just take the NFL schedule. When they have their draft, we can have our portal, and then we can roll. I'm of the opinion that I like the momentum for that in some ways to be what we see.
I mean, it didn't have to be exactly like that, but, that to me makes more sense. The only thing that complicates that is if I know in December – that I'm not going to play for a team I guess spring football would have to go completely away and be OTAs. So you would have to be like, I'm in the transfer portal. I'm going to transfer in April. There's no spring ball. Because if I know for a fact I'm not going to be at Indiana next year and I'm going to be one of 5 places, then, I don't need to be going to spring ball. I need to enroll in my other school as soon as I can. But if you get rid of spring ball and just do OTAs, then that fixes that problem. At least I think it does.
I don't know if they ever can fix what the portal is. They're trying to in the different windows or whatever. I think to me it seems like it's open 24/7.
Let's be the NFL, but do anything but sign contracts and have real free agency and the stuff that actually makes it sort of controlled and balanced and clear cut. Let's do everything but those things that actually make it what the NFL is, and that's the big difference that will remain, I guess. Although now we are seeing contracts just different type of business being done, a very clear side of business where there's clear agents and clear this, and then there's just whatever the hell's going on in college where there's some of that, and then there's also like Uncle Ron who's just certified or whatever 5 days ago, who's negotiating with the Lambo dealership or something. It's that's where those two sports are definitely different, but it seems like in every other way the college side is trying to be the NFL. I mean, that's something that we've talked about for quite a while with the Super League concepts and the whole idea by some SEC or Big Ten fans that that's what they should do is have the NFL and be like the NFL. And I don't know. I think in the minds of some of the executives, you don't feel like you can afford to run off like all of the Big 12 fandom, right? Like you can look at certain markets and say, we don't necessarily need you because we have Ohio State and Texas, but I don't think you can afford to just completely get rid of swaths of the country, even if they're not the most populated. But I do think that these are the types of things that there are casual fans that are going to be like, dude, this is the NFL. What are we doing? This is not college football. And so I do think it makes sense because of where we are, but I am a little bit leery that everything's now starting to just become the NFL version of college football.
Yeah, I just wish they could have some, at least, I said this the first time we ever heard about the portal, or not NIL, but just have some sort of, at least a pathway of what you see. Did you see the latest lawsuit against the NCAA? That now there's an athlete, a golfer at Oklahoma, suing the NCAA because they're saying you cannot play at 2 schools within the same school year. Same semester. You cannot, start at OU, and then in October or whenever they would be, you can't transfer to Wake Forest.
If you're paying all these, here's where the NCAA and collective bargaining, I don't know why they haven't figured this out. You're still paying all these lawyers all this money, right? You can pay them to do one thing every 10 years, or you can and keep working on that, or you can pay them to do every little thing that comes up. They're like a guy who is like, I don't believe that bees will sting me if I grab their hive. And then he grabs the hive and he's like, why do they sting me? As opposed to just get a friggin' beekeeper, man.
Yeah. No,
do that.
You knew there was going to be something from the JUCO to then it was NAIA or Division II, whatever. That's one that I saw just pop up and almost wanted to throw up. I didn't want to talk about it, but it's part of it. It's the latest one.
Did you read the details of it?
No.
Okay, so it's not just like they were at Oklahoma and they're like, I'm going to go to Florida now. Holly McClain is the suer. It was an involuntary decision after she and multiple teammates were told last November their scholarships would not be renewed due to new budgetary constraints resulting from the House settlement. She got cut, basically, and tried to go play for South Florida. And so that's where the lawsuit comes from, is the objection that a student-athlete can't play for 2 schools in the same academic year. And so there's the legalities that start to make this a bit of a mushy thing. But the portrayal initially is, here's this golfer, and they're just like, I'm leaving, and I'm going to go play for this other school in the same year. In reality, it was that Oklahoma had cutbacks. And so she wanted to go play for South Florida to try and continue playing, and she played in the Big 12 Conference Championship. They had it, here we go. So she played in the Schooner Fall Classic last fall, which is non-championship competition. The results don't count towards the team score, so it didn't count towards Oklahoma's score, and she competed as an individual. It didn't have any effect on championship play. And so then she got told less than 2 months after that Classic that she was being cut. And so that's kind of where all this originates from, is whether that should count as having, been part of that. But yeah, it's not somebody like Diego Pavia, like JUCO doesn't count and this or that. I mean, I guess it's similar to that. It's not apples to apples either. But I mean, I'm with you like on the surface of how many of these we're going to see. I'd imagine probably dozens of hundreds more. But I kind of see her point here of, you kind of got jobbed out of a spot on the OU golf team because OU suddenly decided, well, we've got to pay more money to football.
That's very similar that if a coach leaves, then all bets are off.
Well, and what happens now? You can leave, right?
Yep. You're right. That's a good point. The Big Ten, copycat. You run everything. Well, you're smart. You're going to Vegas for your Big Ten Media Days in late July. All of those teams, the logos, the Big Ten will be at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. That's where the Big 12 was last summer. We had a great time. Really enjoyed that trip. Big 12 Media Days in Las Vegas.
Well, they're doing it where the Super Bowl was, at the Mandalay Bay. We were at Allegiant, but we were at the Mandalay Bay for the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl Radio Row.
Yeah, that's where we were. So good job. I mean, look, they have
a monstrous facility.
They have a billion teams, so they need more room than a stadium can provide, I guess.
Well, a different time zone for the teams that are the USC, UCLA, and Oregon and Washington are out on the western part of the United States. So there we are. There's the Big 12.
How many
Big
Northwestern players get busted counting cards? They've got a system.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I remember a couple of obnoxious Big Ten fans snickering at the Big 12 going to Vegas last year. Now here they are, but it's different for them, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's different for them.
Why would you snicker about anyone going to Vegas for any reason?
Because it's like it's those types of people that like, it's the tribalism aspect, I guess. Yeah. It's just really like, it's like, how old are you? Honestly,
like
why would you care?
Thing.
Huh?
It's like the private equity thing.
It's just why would you? Who's out there? I don't know. Anyway, so
there's this, and no offense to it, but it's always been in Indianapolis.
Yeah,
all the time. I mean, you kind of get tired of going there. Indianapolis is a great host for things, Smoky, but even still, like, makes a ton of sense. Like, just change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I vividly remember that, and I think it was more of like a punching down type of thing of like, people just sort of obsessed with punching at the Big 12 for, I don't know, whatever reasons. But regardless, here they are now, and young me still reconciling slowly but surely. I mean, I've fully accepted Las Vegas as a part of the sports fabric now and will never leave, but it's still just this kind of humorous to look back on how taboo that was. And the more and more events now, like, I mean, what event hasn't gone to Las Vegas now at this point? I mean, I'm sure the SEC will be in Vegas here in the next few years somehow or another, but every pro sport's almost there at this point. The A's will be there soon. It's just a matter of time before they get an NBA franchise. No, it won't be the Mavericks because that whole report was BS to begin with. But, I mean, that's Sports Central now. And now they're, adding even events like this, Big 12 last year. The difference here is Big 12 is at Allegiant Stadium, the Raiders arena or stadium, and this is at Mandalay Bay. But what was it? Mountain West was in Vegas last year as well. They had that day that was scheduled right at the same time. They were there in Vegas. So, yeah, man, it's Sports Central now, which is something that would boggle people's minds if you had gone on a time ship like 10, 20 years ago and showed them all that would be going on nowadays in the desert.
They treated us well, had a great time, back-to-back events from Super Bowl to Big 12 Media Days. When we come back, he, former sports agent, he is an expert when it comes to NFL contracts and the salary cap. We brought up yesterday that the number was higher than most people thought it would be. What does all that mean? Some of the contracts that need to be, I guess, negotiated. Joel Corey, this is a great segment coming up. He's next from CBS Sports on 365 Sports. The Baylor Club inside McClain Stadium off I-35 in Waco, and they've got these daily and sometimes, special events that they are hosting inside a great facility inside McClain Stadium, and it's a Friday night. So you know what they do on Friday nights? They have steak and lobster. So if you want that, you can get that tonight at the Baylor Club. By the way, tell them if you do get there that you're a part of watching what we do, 365 Sports. Also, tell them that you're a part of watching our show on an everyday basis, and you will get a discounted rate, or at least they will talk to you about a little bit better deal when it comes to the initiation fee and your monthly cost. This is a fantastic place, great food, the chefs are amazing, and so are the views inside McClain Stadium off I-35 in the Brazos River. The Baylor Club. Tell General Manager Mike Mosel we sent you.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don Humidor, you're home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Joe Corey, I've watched him. His feed is fantastic at Corey, Corry, Joel. Former sports agent, but also very much in tune with the NFL contracts and salary cap and much more. Joel, thank you. How you been?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I saw your note earlier about having a flight on Southwest. Did you get bumped around? What was the deal?
Oh, that's a year ago from me going to and from the combine that my flight got canceled. And first we had to switch planes. I live in Vegas. Then when we got to the connecting space, I couldn't make my connector. Then I ended up not getting in until 7 hours later. Then on the way back, it was almost as bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I went through a stretch where a lot of my flights, unfortunately, have been delayed. It has been more than not. All right. So yesterday the news came in that the salary cap, and this happens on occasion, is jumping a little bit more than most people thought. How much do you think that makes a difference, or is it maybe not as much as we think?
Every little bit helps, particularly for teams which have tight salary cap situations. The range initially was 265 to 275, that million, that is. I was thinking it would be the higher end of that range. So now we have 277.5 to 281.5. what it does do is, because of the way franchise tag and transition tags are calculated, is it increases those numbers.
Joel, I'm curious as to why the Cowboys are so terrified of the salary cap. You've been doing this for a long time. They don't really they push to the deadline all the time with renegotiating, although I think Dak Prescott kind of called them on that and said, all right, if you're going to push, then I'm going to push right back this year. And then they're always kind of scrambling, and then they say they don't have cap room to do things. Why are they so afraid of it when a team like the Rams or the Eagles or those teams are not?
I have no idea why Dallas operates the way they do. The best run teams are proactive in terms of doing deals with your core players. That's something that Howie Roseman learned from Joe Banner, his mentor. And Joe was like the architect of this: sign your best players as soon as possible under the rookie contracts, because you'll get them cheaper, and try to structure the deal in a way where if something goes wrong, there will be minimal cap pain. Dallas, for some reason, takes the opposite approach. I don't know why, but I'll use Dak as an example last year. There's no way you were getting a deal for under $60 million per year, no matter when you did it. When Jerry said, I need to see more leaves fall. No, you didn't. He had all the leverage because of the way you treated the last contract, where you dragged your feet and had him play under franchise tag, and then he had you over a barrel, got a no trade clause, got a no franchise, no transition tag clause. Then you restructured the contract 3-4 other times. So you've had it set up where you're going to have over $40 million in dead money if he walked away. That's on you. So you could have done the deal last March. It was going to be $60 million. You could have done it when you did it in September. It was going to be $60 million. Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and anybody else who signed last year was not going to have any bearing on that deal because of all the leverage that Dak Prescott had.
Joel, do you feel like they just love the attention when it lingers? That is the thought, that their name is up on the screen no matter what shows or networks you watch, and they kind of maybe enjoy that attention even if it's going to come to the conclusion you mentioned?
Yeah, it sure seems that way, and it seems like that's now trickled down. It's trickling down into the players, because you have certain players who generate headlines, and one in particular had a Hall of Fame linebacker, the guy who redefined the outside linebacker position, criticize him because of all of his comments that he makes, meaning Micah Parsons.
Joel, you mentioned the Eagles earlier. Are they playing chess right now while everybody else plays checkers because of the way they were able to, like you said, get their core intact, and then they draft just so incredibly well?
Yeah, well, that's the one thing. If you have a bunch of high-priced players, you better hit on the draft, hitting the draft. Dallas actually drafts fairly well. Mm-hmm. That's not the problem. Dallas does not participate, excuse me, in the first wave of free agency for the most part. I think the last time Dallas made a splash was Brandon Carr in 2012. But the Eagles take things to an extreme. They structure contracts in a way where you have very low cap numbers early on, because they do multiple option bonuses in contracts. Jalen Hurts, $51 million per year deal, cap number under $15 million this year. Saquon Barkley signed for basically $13 million per year, $3.8 million cap number. So as long as you can do that with the right guys, if you miss on a guy, then you're going to have a whole lot of cap pain like they did with Carson Wentz, when at the time, to get rid of him, they had a record almost $31 million in dead money. But they also did something that some teams don't do. Draft a quarterback when you don't need one. You just paid Carson Wentz, but you drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round.
Joel Corey with us on 365 Sports. Joel, I've said this before, and I've always been kind of like shot down for this, but is there truly a cap? Or can there always be a way, no matter where you are with it?
No, there's a cap. The Saints are caught between a rock and a hard place this year. That's an aging team. They kick the can down the road more than anybody else in the NFL. So they're probably going to be forced to restructure Derek Carr again and create $31 million in cap space, where if they weren't that aggressive for a team which isn't a playoff team, then they would have more flexibility. They're better off blowing it up, but that's not their MO.
Joel, what teams do you think that other than the Eagles, what are the ones that you find the most masterful at building their rosters?
I like what the Rams have done because that was a team that was all in on winning a Super Bowl. They shifted gears on the fly. In 2023, after a disappointing 22 season when they were trying to defend their championship, they decided to trade Jalen Ramsey. They mutually agreed to part ways with Bobby Wagner because he didn't sign up for a rebuilding thing. They drafted well, and they got back to the playoffs in 2023. And this year's draft was really good for them. They got 2 stud defensive linemen. Last year, they found a defensive lineman in the 3rd round. They didn't really miss Aaron Donald on the defensive line, believe it or not. And they're going to move on from Cooper Kupp. They make hard decisions when they have to.
How many times when you were an agent for a player and you got what you thought was not only a fair deal but a good deal, but the client didn't want it because, well, they felt like they deserved more? How often do we sometimes blame the franchise, in this case the Cowboys quite a bit, rather than maybe it's not the agent, or it is, but also the player who's just kind of pushing this thing down the road?
I didn't have too many players that had unrealistic expectations because as an agent, it's your job to manage expectations. So I would create charts with data and we'd go over what your market should be. I sometimes had the opposite problem where my hardest negotiation was with a player because sometimes his wife or significant other or family or dad had his ear and was like, that's a lot of money. You can't turn that down. And I'm like, that's not what the market is. So I'm like, let me do my job. And as an agent, it's your job to execute the client's wishes. So there are a couple of occasions where if left to my own devices, I ended up closing a deal, which I wouldn't have because that's what the client wanted.
How about hometown discounts? What is that? Is that a 4-letter word to agents?
Yes, it is. We have one situation going on right now where I have no sympathy for a player who took a hometown discount. That's Matthew Stafford. The Rams traded Jared Goff and a bunch of picks to get him in 2021. They win the Super Bowl. He has all the leverage in the world. You might as well have given him a blank contract and had him fill it out. Aaron Rodgers just became the first $50 million per year player. What does he do? He signs for $40 million per year, same as Dak Prescott, and now he's unhappy with his contract. If you make a conscious decision to leave money on the table, I don't really want to hear you come back and ask for more money. What you should have done at that time was get your $51 million per year and then let the Rams worry about having you take a pay cut.
I know it's realistic for Deebo Samuel to get traded. His contract is pretty movable. The 49ers really kind of handle those things kind of well for the most part. Is it reasonable to trade Myles Garrett?
No. One, the Browns don't want to do it. You don't give away elite pass rushers because the second most valuable player in the NFL behind a quarterback is a pass rusher. First guy you pay is the quarterback. The second guy you pay is the guy who chases the quarterback. Traditionally, it's been the third guy you pay is the guy who stops the guy chasing the quarterback, although receiver salaries have exploded. Myles Garrett is a future Hall of Famer. From a cap standpoint, the Browns have restructured his contract, and they've done what the Eagles are doing because Andrew Berry came from the Eagles, their GM. He's done a lot of option bonuses in the contract with picking up voiding dummy years. So his cap hit is like 17.8. But if you trade him and you get 2025 draft capital, you're going to have $41 million in dead money. I'm saying that because there's an option $5 million option due the third day of the league year, March 14th. They're not going to change their mind, I don't think, and trade him before then. So you really can't afford to have that much of a cap hit increase to go from 17.8, 17.9 to 41 million in dead money. That's not feasible. And then the only way it works is if you do it after June 1, where you can split the cap hit in 2 years, where it'd be 15 and some change in 2020 and 2025, and the dead money would be 25 million in 2026, but you don't get 2025 draft capital. If I'm the Browns, I do everything in my power to convince them that we have a plan that we're going to be competitive. I was a little surprised by the trade request after what he said on one of those last Hard Knocks shows, that we're closer than you think to playing meaningful football. So I wonder where that went. I think everyone has a price, and there's probably some price that'll be ridiculous that Cleveland could pay him to rescind his trade request.
How much does the value at running back jump after what we saw this year? I know Ashton Genty's coming out, and there's a couple of others, but does it jump? And will it jump more in the draft, or will it jump more with free agency?
It's going to depend on the talent of the running back. If you have a special running back, then he may get pushed up in the draft. If you have a special back who's got a contract up, then he's going to reap the benefit. What we did see in 2023 is the best running back that year was the highest paid running back in Christian McCaffrey. And then this year, Saquon Barkley goes out and signs for basically $13 million per year, has a season for the ages. There are two guys I know who will benefit from this, not this year, but probably next offseason, Jamar Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Those guys were taken in the top 10 in, what was that, 2022? Yeah, 2022. 2023. They're taking the top in the first round of 2023. Those will be the guys that will benefit from it when they're eligible for an extension in 2026.
Joel, the Deshaun Watson contract was, on the Browns' end, the dumbest in history. I'm sure for the agents and for Deshaun Watson, it's great news because it doesn't matter what happened to him. What were your thoughts about that when it happened, and now seeing where Deshaun Watson is, where he probably never plays in the league again?
I was shocked that it happened because he had 4 years left on his contract extension. So you typically don't rip up a contract in the NFL, and particularly you don't give someone a new deal, let alone a fully guaranteed contract. But if you go back at that time, Cleveland had been eliminated from the trade sweepstakes. It was down to the Saints and the Falcons. So I guess for Cleveland to get back in, I don't know if this happened, but I suspect that David Mulugheta, Watson's agent, asked for something crazy, and the Browns bid on it, and that's how we got to where we are.
When you look at what Washington did with Jaden Daniels, and I'm just curious, when he was coming out, Heisman Trophy winner, obviously there was who was going to go 1 or 2, but it was pretty obvious who was going to go number 1, who was going to number 2. How much did, in your opinion, he affect the team compared to maybe some rookies in the last decade? And they seem to, with the new ownership, the coaching change, they had some dudes that are Grizzly veterans. Obviously, Bobby Wagner, among some others. How much did who they signed as free agents create who they were as much as anything else?
One, from what I understand, Jaden Daniels has a great work ethic. He's one of those first in, last out guys. So you need that, particularly from your quarterback. The Grizzly vets, the Bobby Wagners, the Zach Ertzes, took a liking to him because they saw his work ethic. So that really helped as well. And those two guys in particular helped change the culture. They're now ahead of the curve. They're playing with house money to a degree, kind of like the Texans were, because nobody expected the Texans in 2023 to be a playoff team, let alone win a game. And then they went out and made a push while C.J. Stroud is still cheap by bringing in more talent. That's where the Commanders are. Nobody expected them to be in the playoffs, let alone in the NFC Championship game. So it'll be interesting to see which one of these guys on the one-year deals they bring back. And they have like $85 million in cap space, so they have the ability to go out and take a swing through a trade maybe try to pry Myles Garrett away or make a splash in free agency for somebody. So I'll be curious to see what they actually do.
Joel, Brock Purdy, is he going to get paid?
Yes. One thing that people lose sight of is that if Brock Purdy didn't exist, John Lynch might be back in the broadcast booth, or he could be the Stanford GM instead of Andrew Luck, and Kyle Shanahan might be an offensive coordinator because that was a big whiff on Trey Lance. So he basically saved them. Anyone who's saying, "Oh, Brock Purdy isn't worth more than $40 million per year," I want some of what you're smoking. Now, they gave Colin Kaepernick a contract over a decade ago, made him the 6th highest paid quarterback in the league, and it was a terrible structure in that contract. Now, what the Niners are going to probably have to reconcile with is they made a guy the highest paid player in the league after 5 good games at one point in time. Brock Purdy's done a whole lot more than 5 good games. Well, you've gotten to a conference championship game, almost won a Super Bowl. So if you can make Jimmy Garoppolo the highest paid player after only playing 5 good games for you, then you should be able to do that with Brock Purdy.
Joel, if in fact Micah Parsons was your client, and you mentioned him earlier, and of course he's going to get a new contract, and he has his podcast, and he was popping this and that, and if you're his agent, Mulligata, how quickly would that conversation with him be made or be called, or how quickly would you contact him to tell him to shut up about a hometown discount?
Oh, it would be a repetitive conversation. I'd need a large bottle of Advil because of that. The thing is that I don't think you can control what Micah Parsons is going to say, because he even acknowledged in one of the quotes, "I know my agent's going to be mad at me for saying this." Mm-hmm. But if I'm Dallas, I call him on his bluff. I tell him to put his money where his mouth is. I try to get the deal done as soon as possible. Say, "Hey, you said you'd take a hometown discount. There's no difference between 30 and 40 million. We'll treat you like we did DeMarcus Lawrence. We made him the 2nd highest paid edge rusher, and his guarantees were like 2nd and 3rd in the league. And depending upon what metric for edge rushers, we'll do the same for you. We'll house $31 million per year sound. We'll give you $100 million guarantees, 80 fully guaranteed at signing, and call it a day." That's not going to happen because Dallas would have to change how they do business. I think a snowball's got a better chance in hell than that happening, honestly. But I think what really ends up happening is they drag their feet. Parsons gets frustrated because they don't go out and spend in free agency, and that whole hometown discount thing goes out the window when he doesn't have a deal and when training camp's approaching, and he's going to want what he's worth. And then you're going to be talking maybe $40 million per year at that point.
Joel, you mentioned maybe being the GM at Stanford. How do you think that job differs from the NFL GM, if anything, right now, other than the lack of structure in contracts when it comes to college athletics?
It's got to be harder because everyone's a free agent after 1 year. Mm-hmm. You have free agency every year because of transfer portal. So it's how do you do planning? You can't do long range planning because you don't know who's going to be there from year to year. So it's a different landscape. But as you're seeing, more and more programs are bringing NFL people to have that GM role. Bill Belichick brought Mike Lombardi, who's been a longtime NFL executive, Browns, Raiders. So that's how it's going. The University of Florida just hired Nick Polk, who was a longtime contract negotiator for the Falcons. He did Michael Vick's deal, also did all of Matt Ryan's deal. So that's a new position for former team executives and maybe some agents who want to switch over to that side.
Has anyone ever contacted you about doing an NIL deal?
A couple of times. I've done a couple of them, but that's not something that I actively seek out.
Well, okay. I was just curious about that because of your knowledge of what all the other stuff. Thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Great to have you on, Joel. It's always a pleasure to get you on when you can.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Yep, Joel Corey, CBS Sports, does a great job. We could go an hour or so with him on just like mention a name. I saw something in the chat about Cooper Kupp or Kansas City, and are they able to continue on despite, it's all of a sudden you think about the loss, not the fact they were trying to win 3 in a row. So thank you to Joel Corey. Loved getting him on a couple of times a year and on 365 Sports. When we come back, Jed Drenning, West Virginia. We've been looking at the schedules, and we continue to do that later on with Iowa State. But also, we had Robert Allen yesterday on Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, curious about what is the feeling, the pulse right now in Morgantown with West Virginia, Rich Rod, and much more. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Central Texas Marketplace, Dr. Rob Maxey, one of the partners, and I absolutely love what they do. State-of-the-art imaging machine. I have a CD or a disc, whatever you want to call it, that's on my desk after being in their MRI machine last Saturday. Got the results. The doctors got the results, and they called me and kind of went over it with me. Luckily, my shoulder, which has been okay today, it's been probably in the last 24 to 48 hours at about a 70, 75, 80%, feels good, with a little stinging at one point or another. But the MRI showed something, that there's no structural damage. Now, there was honestly, mentally, a part of me is like, man, tell me there's a torn muscle, or God knows, maybe something else worse than that, because there's got to be something to create this kind of stinging pain I have. It didn't show that. It showed that I've got a little bit of this up and down my spine, from my neck down to the bottom part of my spine, and that can create things that flare up at times. And so I've been doing physical therapy with that, with a good young man that knows his stuff, and helped me out because I felt good the last couple of days. $497 is how much it cost every single time, never more than that. Marcus was great, the tech who helped me out on Saturday, and they'll help you out every day at Ideal MRI.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget, from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560, or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Awaiting Jed Drenning, sideline analyst for West Virginia football, also does that fantastic preseason magazine and prep before the year begins. Jed Drenning will join us here momentarily on 365 Sports. Men's basketball coming up this weekend. We had Scott Drew on earlier to start the show as they were about to get on a charter to fly into Boulder. Houston hosting ESPN College Game Day. We mentioned that. Rick Pitino and St. John's, who Baylor, remember, beat like in the Bahamas or wherever the hell they were. And it was a controversial ending on either a free throw, the clock, or whatever. But they won that game. Has said he's not going to basically has said, I'm not recruiting high school players. And it's not that there may not be somebody that comes along. That I'm sure if VJ Edgecombe or Trey Johnson coming out of high school, if they could get them, or Carmelo, etc., he would do that. But here is a stat. College Basketball Report, the number of freshmen playing starter minutes of each of the current top 10 teams entering this weekend. Duke, that's different. Duke can get the freshmen, they can get the All-Americans, they can get the parade All-Americans. But look at everybody else. One from Alabama, one from Auburn, one from Tech and Grant McCaslin, and everybody else, the starters. And this was what was so good about the Baylor team in 21. They were seasoned, marinated, and very, very experienced.
High school recruiting's tough now. And, of course, if you are Duke, you have time. You have time for that. St. John's and Rick Pitino, given how long it's been and how old Rick Pitino is, Rick Pitino doesn't have time to develop freshmen anymore. They better be a stud, or he can't do that.
Jed Drenning with us. Again, the West Virginia football sideline analyst reporter, and also a part of a great preseason magazine that I've told you, a preseason edition, joins us on 360. We're in
Smokey, I think we're having audio issues. I can't hear you.
Okay, all right. I can hear you. What do you think?
Can't hear you, buddy.
Okay.
Can't hear us?
Yeah.
Here, Jed, see if he can reconnect.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Try to reconnect, Jed.
Yeah, I'll text him.
All right. We'll reconnect with you and then try to get him back on. He's covers West Virginia. Wanted to get a pulse of the excitement, which I'm sure is very high right now when it comes to West Virginia football, with what Rich Rodriguez is going to bring to the table, and also so much more. I have a question that is just as we kind of tread water here. Craig, if you were ranking the quarterbacks, no matter what conference, the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, ACC, if and when you rank the quarterbacks, if you did, how much would the player himself add into the mix compared to who is his head coach as a play caller, if they are? Well, okay, Arch Manning. How much of what we hear or what we see as expectations that he has earned, even though he hasn't played a lot, but he's earned that, but also how much comes into play that Steve Sarkisian is his head coach and play caller?
I mean, a lot of it. I think it's a balancing act with that particular example. I don't know that there's a clear-cut just answer to this, because I think some cases are different.
Yeah.
Sam Levitt's a great player, but also it's the fact he's got Kenny Dillingham as his head coach. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit of a mixed bag, but certainly if you have a great offensive mind coaching a well-known talent like the example you just gave there, then, yeah, it's a little bit of both. But I guess it would depend on which school exactly you're talking about, because Ohio State, I don't know who their starting quarterback's going to be necessarily, but you feel pretty confident who that will be because it's, Ryan Day leading the charge. But, if it's a certain player versus the other, it might amp that up a little bit because of the double whammy of that, like an Arch and Sarkisian combination. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that exactly. I think it's it just depends on the circumstance, but they're definitely, I mean, that's a prime one that's as much of a balancing act as far as hype and belief in what that's going to turn into as probably as much as anyone, because there's no more hyped player than Arch Manning, and there's not many better offensive minds right now than Steve Sarkisian. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that, but I did my best there, I think.
Jed, I think we got you back. We got you back. Jed Drenning there.
I think we do. I hear you. You heard me. Now I hear you. So
yeah, we did.
That's what we need.
What is the pulse, the excitement level with Rich Rod back?
Oh, there's a vibe. He was just at the basketball game the other day, and went out on the floor with the entire staff and spoke for a few minutes, got some loud cheers. Of course, he said it's 206 days until we play Pitt. That got a loud cheer. But, there's an excitement. I mean, right now, the roster is obviously in transition's an understatement. But this is a guy who's been through this before. Even as recently as last year at Jacksonville State, Coach Rod had 60 new players, 40 new players after spring ball. So we added 26, 27, give or take, since he got here, if you want to count the recruiting class. And I would say that April portal window is going to be pretty meaningful too. We have spring ball earlier than we ever have. So that kind of lines us up and puts us in a position of leverage to get everything in our sights and get ready for that, because it's April 5th. So we have about 10 days to get ready for that. But something tells me this roster will be put together even through the course of parts of the summer when we're into OTAs.
Jed, they are getting a ton of new players. Which players do you think that are returning fit the system, especially offensively, that he's going to run better? Because it will be different than Neil Brown's a little bit, maybe a lot of it.
Yeah, it will. Again, I always try and stress to people, look, all spreads aren't created equally. There's two very obvious, not just branches to the spread offense, but different trees. Neil came from the air raid tree with Hal Mummy and Mike Leach and on down the line. Rich doesn't come from the air raid. What we came from was the run and shoot. Everything we did was a predicate of the old Mouse Davis run and shoot. When we first installed this at Glenville State College in 1991, we were watching Jim Kelly, Houston Gamblers tape, Warren Moon with Jack Pardee and the Oilers back in the 80s. So it was tried and true run and shoot, much different than the air raid. Then over the arc of time, what he did was he kind of made it his own with different protections, different elements of the run game, different sight adjustments, different hot reads. So it is much different. But to answer your question, I'd start with the quarterback room. The guy we have returning, because that's what you asked, is Nico Marchiol. Nico had a couple starts last year. In effect, he's had 4 starts, even though he got in a couple snaps after the start of the backyard brawl a couple years ago. We kind of count that as a start. He's 4-0 in those games in which he's played his most meaningful football. Nico is tougher than a $2 steak. That's something that's going to appeal to Coach Rodriguez. He wants toughness out of that position. He wants intelligence and decisiveness out of that position. So in that respect, I think Nico is a good fit. And if you're asking yourself, well, what about the run game piece of it? Well, quarterbacks in Rich's system, in the modern version of his system, I sure wasn't one of these guys running the football. That's back when we were throwing it 50 times a game. Mm-hmm. But in the modern version of the system, even when you look at Tyler Huff last year at Jack State, he was a 4.7 kid, but he was just not just a willing runner, but an able runner, very physical, willing to stick his head in there and go into the briar patch and get the extra yard. Everybody doesn't have to be a Pat White. And when you look at what Nico Marchiol has done as a runner, the run that Mountaineer fans still talk about, the run that he made against Oklahoma State and showed his physicality. But I think he'll be a nice fit as a piece of the run game. But then we've added some pieces in that room. And then, of course, you go to Jaheim White. I think Jaheim White, when you look at his skill set, he has the twitch, but more importantly, he has the vision to be a very solid zone runner. We ran a lot of that with Neil as well. We ran a lot of the stretch play. And the stretch play is Coach Rod's bread and butter, the outside zone. So I do think that Jaheim has the skill set to do that. Again, we've added a couple other pieces, plus we have a couple freshmen that were untested last year. So that room's not necessarily in a bad spot. The question becomes, what does it look like up front at the point of attack? Basically, we lost all 5 starters, most of our 2 deep, either to the portal or graduation. Wyatt Milam's going to be off to the NFL draft as a stud at left tackle. But Landon Livingston's returning right now, running with the ones at center. But we've had to dip into the portal there. We've got a new offensive line coach, obviously, in Jack McNell. See how that all pieces together. But on the defensive side, anybody's guess. We're looking at 11 new starters. And Zach Alley has said, I'm not so sure I can articulate who those starters might be until the Friday night before the opener on that Saturday against Robert Morris. So that's kind of where we're at. It's like I said, massive transition.
Jed, going back to that running game, what did you think about the loss of Coach Chad Scott to Texas? And how do you think they go about replacing him? And just what do you think are the effects of that particular move?
Well, the downside is Chad's a good coach. and he's a good recruiter. And the kids in the room really love him. I mean, what he does is he forges genuine relationships that are beyond football with those kids in a very meaningful way. And so Texas is getting a good one. There's no doubt about that. But the upside to it is that's now somewhat of a coveted job. You have a team in transition with a new staff and an excitement and an energy around the program. So a full-time job coaching any room, especially a room with basically, if you look at the track record of what Rich has done with all the different 1,000-yard backs, 300-yard rushing efforts, 200-yard rushing efforts, that position is probably more consistently produced throughout the duration of his career than maybe even the quarterback spot at every place he's been. So whoever lands in that room as that next coach is going to be in a pretty good spot in terms of what they're going to be asked to do within the confines of Rich's offense.
When you watch him and what he does, and of course you've been there when he was there, you know all about him, but does he command the room differently than others you've had recently, Neil Brown, et cetera?
Yeah, different. It is different. You know, I'm the last guy who's going to cast aspersions at Neil Brown. I think he built a very stable foundation here at West Virginia. What Rich does is different in the sense that he uses the phrase hard edge. And that's not just a talking point. It's really a way of life. And what you're getting with Rich Rodriguez, you know, my podcast partner, Owen Schmidt, has said, you're not getting a coach, you're getting a program. That's what you're hiring. You're hiring an entire program and a culture and a style of play and a certain element of toughness. And that grind is going to continue way outside the lines. Everything you go about your business doing is going to be different. There is a very heavy level of discipline, on down to the tiny little things that you wouldn't expect. Your shoes have to be the same color. Your socks have to be the same color. All these little things in the off season don't seem to matter. That's stacking pennies because those little things do add up and they do matter. And he prides himself. All three phases of the game are going to be defined by their toughness. And he always says, look, the average fan sitting in the stands, they might not understand or be advanced enough to appreciate the X's and O's, what you do right, what you do wrong. But you know what they do get right? What the average blue collar fan, all of them, what they do get right, what they can easily tell, if you're playing hard. If you're playing hard, fans know, fans can tell, and fans appreciate that. And that really resonates with them. And as a guy who grew up in Granttown, West Virginia, he understands the culture of the program. He understands the meaning of that toughness and just how much it does mean to the fan base. And I think that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a hardworking group that does have that hard edge, that's going to play with a certain element of toughness. And if you want to smack them in the mouth, you better be ready to get smacked back because they're not going to back off. And that's just the approach that he's taken ever since I've known him. I first met him when I was a junior in high school, and he was a 23-year-old assistant at Salem College living with Lonnie Warwick. May he, rest in peace. He's another West Virginia legend, a former member of the Minnesota Vikings back in the fearsome foursome days. But even back then, Rich had this edge to him that just set him apart. If you sat down for more than a few minutes and had a conversation with him, you quickly picked up on the fact this is an intense dude, and it's an infectious intensity, and it rubs off on those around him, not just the players, but the staff, or even, those working in the building. They all understand what this culture is, or they're not going to be part of it. And that's just how this is going to work.
So Pat White's on the staff now, and I don't you couldn't even tell me what he was going to do, and I would tell you that's a great idea, just to remind people, hey, this dude was here, and it is possible to have these kind of guys, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there have been some good stretches, but that was his era was the last stretch where it felt like West Virginia could be a player on the national scene year in and year out and get guys like Pat White, because they had Pat and Noel Devine and Slayton and all those guys that were just so good.
Yeah, we've won BCS bowls since then. The Orange Bowl with Dana was since then. But you're right in the sense that when it came to the conversation about who's going to be left standing, that last handful of brands at the end of the season to talk national championship possibilities, that was the last time in Morgantown. And, the thing about it is, I think it speaks to a lot. Now, I'll get to Pat in a minute, but even before Pat, what a lot of people fail to recognize is we're trying to be giant slayers. That's what West Virginia's always tried to do. For 100 years, we overachieved. And in college football 1.0, that's what made us who we were, winning more games than we should, knocking off some of these blue bloods, producing more kids after developing them for 4 to 5 years that get into the NFL draft, way more than we ever should in a state with a population of 1.8 million. And that's what made us who we were. But when you look right before Pat White got here, Rasheed Marshall graduated with more wins against ranked football teams than any starting quarterback in the history of West Virginia football, which was also under Rich Rodriguez. So it was getting amped up with Rasheed and Quincy Wilson and that crew. And then by the time you mentioned Steve and Owen and Pat, by the time they got up and running, it was really humming. And Noel Devine comes in. Noel Devine's now back on staff. And Rich has said, look, I didn't bring these guys back just because they're former players and they remind us of how great we used to be. I brought them back because of what they offer as coaches today. They can help us win. And that's true of Pat. He has the it factor. Any room that he steps into, he's going to command everybody's attention. His reputation precedes him. And for that matter, it's pretty cool for young running backs. There's a lot of players that I would say when Noel played 15, 20 years ago, for the modern player, most of those guys are forgotten. But you know what? When you become a YouTube phenom, like Noel Devine did before he even arrived in Morgantown when he was playing high school ball in Florida, for some reason, those things live forever in perpetuity on the internet. And those young kids still know who Noel Devine is. Those young kids still know who Pat White is in large measure because of the video games, the EA Sports part of it. So it's pretty cool. And it's nice to have guys like that back around, pitching in and playing key roles in what we're trying to build here.
So, Jed, with those guys back around the program or in certain positions and just kind of the feeling of having some of the legends be so excited, the excitement of the fans, just to have a change that was, you could feel it building, the need for change, and that's why they eventually made a change. But to bring back Rich Rod and all those warm and fuzzy memories, what's the excitement level, the anticipation level? I mean, let's face it, we've talked to you a few times, like West Virginia's had some big wins and they've had a nice season and whatnot, but it's always kind of been this feeling of, feels like you guys have wanted more and felt as though there should be more, and now it's kind of pointing in the direction of this is what can provide that. So it just seems like there's just a different feel around the fan base. Would I be correct in saying that? And could you kind of describe what that feeling's like?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. What happened was Neil was hired in 2019 and charged with a massive rebuild. In the midst of that rebuild, here came COVID, here came NIL, here came the portal. The landscape of the game completely shifted. Well, now it's shifting again, but maybe this time around it's shifting a little bit in our direction. Now, here's what I mean by that. Not only is it a great time for a new hire in the sense that it's a fresh start, our scheduling model is going to change. West Virginia for 4 straight years was the only team in the country, I should say, that 4 straight years played 11 power conference schools. I'm not so sure what the wisdom behind that might have been, but now what we're going to do is do what the rest of the Big 12 and the rest of college football do. Starting next year, we're moving into a model where our non-conference league games, those 3 games, we have 1 G5, 1 power conference, which is a rival in Pitt, and then 1 FCS, just like everybody else does. I try to explain to people, look, our 6-6 is everybody else's 7-5 in the Big 12. Well, now we're getting the same scheduling model they have. So that in and of itself is going to help. And now we're going from a rule that was governed and dictated almost strictly by NIL and NIL only. Did you have the funds or didn't you? If not, then a head coach is tasked with going out and trying to beat a team with a roster that was paid 2 or 3 times what yours was. Well, the landscape, as you guys know, and I'm sure you've covered at length, is about to change in very significant ways with this House decision starting July 1st. You're going to go from a strictly NIL model to a revenue share model. And what that can mean for West Virginia is instead of placing in the bottom quarter of the Big 12 an NIL revenue, which we have to offer and compose our roster, now I'd say we could get probably into the middle of the pack from a rev share standpoint, because maybe even a little more, because Ren Baker has strategized and planned for a while at how to get there. And he is convinced we're going to get to that full share, that 22% share, which depending on who you ask is going to be between 20 and 22 million. And I'm not so sure that everybody in the Big 12 will have that. I'm not so sure that everybody in college football will have that. So if you can at least get to the middle of the pack, if you can get more, even better. But the middle of the pack gives you a puncher's chance that in the bottom quarter you didn't have, really. So you can only punch up so much. And I think it's changing with the new staff right in time for that as well. So all these things might be breaking our way. and it could signal good news and, a bright future for West Virginia in the next handful of years.
You mentioned your podcast partner, Owen Schmidt, a former maybe you're never a former fullback. Jed, do you think that he can get Rich Rod to throw the fullback back into the offense?
I'll tell you what, it won't take much talking because that style of play definitely appeals to Coach Rod. There's no doubt about that. And what Rich is going to do is he's also going to cater to the strength of the personnel that he has. If he can find a fullback, he'll absolutely utilize one. But even when you look at what he did last year at Jack State, those two cats between Trey Stewart at running back, and we already mentioned the quarterback, they're the first tandem in the history of FBS football to have 1,500 plus or 1,300 plus yards each and 15 touchdowns. Nobody's ever done that. I could go through a long list of things that were firsts under the watchful eye of Rich Rodriguez as an offensive play caller. And he's been transcendental in terms of the role that he's played really throughout modern college football. A lot of what he's done has become mainstream. So he continues to study, try to evolve, and he's going to utilize whatever he has. But if you get him a fullback that's half of what Owen Smith was, I'll promise you're going to start to see some pro personnel in there. You're going to start to see some fullback when they go max and have those two backs in the backfield. One of them's going to be the big boy, just like it used to be with Owen. It used to be Owen and Steve Slayton or Owen and Noel Devine. Rich would not be reluctant to that whatsoever. He is eager to go downhill and smack you around. So good question, and I think I could easily see that happen.
Jed, last question. It's basketball. I saw West Virginia. They were playing Baylor, in fact, last Saturday. And, of course, the game went into overtime. And they had a chance, and I've seen them play there a couple of times when they probably should have closed the game out but didn't. They have Tech on the road tomorrow. We know exactly how good Grant McCasland and company are. They're in that 16-10, just under 500 in the conference. What do they need to do, in your opinion, to be able to be tournament bound to close this out?
Well, now you got me way out of my element. You need to be asking Caridi. Okay,
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, what I'd start with is you got to start hitting some free throws, because over the last stretch of games, and I've seen Tony talk about this, one of the things we've been afflicted with is not only are we just stone cold at the free throw line, but the opposition's been scorching hot. That's been the difference in a lot of these close games, and you have to find ways to finish it out. And the only way to finish it out is to set yourself up for a better opportunity to finish it out with those opportunities for those charity stripe points. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at this, the restructuring of this roster, because again, if you look at what it was that Coach DeVries inherited, if not for the portal, you're looking at a setback that takes 3 to 5 years to rebuild this thing, really. And out of the gates, he pulled all these major upsets. He was stunning the world. 3 massive wins that nobody saw coming, and put together with a roster that was glued together like a ransom note in large measure on short notice, all through the portal. And you could argue that we've been for the better part of the season without our best player, his kid. So we're regarded, depending on who you ask right now, as a bubble-ish kind of team. But yeah, if you start hitting free throws, we don't have those big guys inside that some of these teams at the top of the Big 12 might have. He's going to work towards getting some of those types of guys, but set the table with that and then hope for the best.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, Jed. Great to see you. Have a
Absolutely.
great weekend. Jed Drenning, West Virginia football sideline analyst with us. And they had wins early in the year, and then we're going to go to Keaton Thomas of Baylor. They beat third-ranked Gonzaga. Remember, they beat the hell out of Baylor to open up the year. They also beat Arizona, beat Kansas, and, they've got themselves beat Iowa State. That's a hell of a resume that might be enough for them, but they just can't, go into a slide to close out the year. We're now joined by Baylor linebacker Keaton Thomas. We had him on when he made the decision to go from the junior college to Baylor and commit with Dave Aranda and company. Keaton, thank you very much for your time with David Paul and also with Craig Smoak. What has the offseason been like after the momentum, despite the bowl loss? How much did that fuel what you guys have been able to do the last couple of months?
What's going on, guys? Appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, this offseason has been pretty good so far. Yeah, that bowl game for sure was tough. That's not how you want to end the season. I think we all were definitely excited to have another opportunity to try and show the world who we are. And even though we didn't come out how we wanted to, we went down swinging. So I'm definitely proud of the team, appreciative of the staff, and all the love and support from the university and anybody at home who's watching. So this offseason so far, we've just been attacking it. The young guys are coming real focused. A lot of these guys that we got from the portal come in real focused. Great energy, great sternness about the team. Everybody's really focused, and I'm super appreciative of that so far. We're about to hit this next stride real hard, and just excited about what's to come. But yeah, we've been going at it. We've been going hard, focused on getting better, stronger, faster, hitting harder, and still same mission. Got a lot of people to prove wrong and a lot of people to make proud.
KT, you guys were able to sneak up on some people last year. Do you like maybe now being the hunted a little bit more, or people knowing that you guys are for real, as opposed to maybe being the surprise team?
Yes, sir, for sure. It could be said that we're still doubted a little bit. I would say I've always been the type of guy who likes to be overlooked. So then when we hit you in the mouth, it's kind of like, woof, it's a little flabbergasted. But I'm sure there's definitely a couple of teams this year who we play. Our game is circled versus them, and they're going to want to come and take us down, and vice versa for us. But definitely excited about that role and the genre changing a little bit for us this year.
Keaton, I know you were asked about playing with Matt Jones back in the fall at some point, but now, he's moving on. Finally, his eligibility is up, and when you look over, you're not going to see him. Just what was that experience like playing alongside Matt Jones, and maybe what are some of the things that you picked up or just things that you will carry over from this past season when it comes to the linebackers and just kind of leading the way and helping keep the charge going?
Yeah, Matty Ice, Matt Jones, 101. Great teammate, great leader, just dependable guy, knows what's going on 24/7, understands the subtle nuances. Playing with him I was basically the rookie and he was the vet. So super appreciative of everything that he taught me, just watching him watch tape, watching how he approaches practice, how hard he goes and everything that he does, and how he is off the field as well. A great citizen, great human being, great husband, great father. So super proud of that guy. It was such a blessing to play with him, and it'll definitely feel different, but it's my turn. The torch has been passed to me, and I'm going to make sure that what he did for me, I'm going to do with the guys, and so on and so forth.
What was the biggest transition for you once you settled in at Baylor, coming in from Northeast Mississippi Community College? What was maybe the most, not difficult, but the one transition that maybe took you a little bit longer?
I would definitely say it would have to be playbook-wise. We're super in-depth into everything we do. We do a lot of rigorous schematics when it comes to the playbook, and coming from JUCO, we do a good bit, but definitely not as much as we do here. So it definitely took me about, I would say, a couple of weeks to maybe 3 max, just really learning how to understand the playbook, all the new savvy words I would have to know, different techniques. All that is probably what I would say the hardest jump. But when it comes to ball, I love ball, and I attack it every day like it's my last. So that part was the fun part, right? Just learning the playbook and understanding the subtle nuances. That was probably the toughest thing coming from JUCO.
Do you enter this year being able to be that Matt Jones version? Do you feel that right now?
Definitely, 100%. The goal is to be that and better, to do what he did and more, and to go on from there and help this team lead and take control of this conference. That's the goal.
Keaton Thomas, Baylor linebacker, with us on 365 Sports. You are a personable young man. We knew that when we interviewed you back when you made the commitment to Baylor. And obviously the way you opened up with us earlier today. You don't just raise your hand and say, I'm the guy. Because you mentioned Matt Jones, Matty Ice, and others that were there. How do you know when people have accepted who you are and it's time to maybe be a leader in certain ways?
Yeah, that's been something that's almost in a way been hard for me, just because I'm so used to being the guy. I wouldn't say necessarily in the background, but I put my head down and work. Blue collar, come from hardworking people, blue collar workers. My ancestors are watermelon farmers, so it's in my blood to just be quiet and work hard and make your family proud and do what you were born to do, right? To have fun and love what you do. But now I've talked to plenty of the coaches, and Coach Vic, our strength coach, in depth about just learning how to become a leader. And it's not always that you aren't a leader. You just have to learn how to become one. And I've been reading a lot of books. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and just trying to learn how to be a more influential leader. But also, if I have to lay the law down, then I have to lay the law down, right? I have to, like a judge, let it known who I am and what I do and what the standard is. You aren't going to come in here and disrespect our house to all the new guys or all the young guys coming in. And just like we wouldn't come to your house and disrespect you guys.
Yeah,
so that's the standard.
Can sometimes a young, like, not I'll say phenom, but some guy that thinks he's hot, you know what? He comes walking in there, and do you have to sometimes just kind of glare him down? How does that work? I'm not talking about fisticuffs, but in a way you got to just kind of, hey, they know.
Definitely. It's always that look, that sternness. If it gets to the point where I need to say something, I will. I'll be the first one to say something. Good, bad, or indifferent. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is holding each other accountable, not being individuals and being one team, one solidified person every time we step on that field, no matter what it is, whether it's a workout, it's practice, a game, or even just an event at the school or in the community. It's all about, not being individuals and being one team. And so if they don't understand that, then they have to go.
You were initially a wide receiver, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When did you make the transformation, not just physically, but mentally, to being a linebacker? Because it's the two most opposite jobs on the football field.
Definitely. So at first it was mentally switching to safety senior year, right? And then from there it went to my first year at JUCO was my first year playing linebacker. And really, I would say it's crazy because a lot of things that I learned offensively, you use defensively. There's a lot of things that you can understand schematically and almost in a sense have foresight on the play because you understand both sides of the ball now. The only thing that I would say has changed is that I get to let that beast out. When you play offense, you got to be a little nice. You got to be a little pretty. But when you're on defense, you get to let that beast out and be wild, have fun, be free, and go hunt. You feel like what are we? We're humans. We're animals. So you get to be almost like back in the day, a Neanderthal per se. Go hunt. Go eat, go get your food. Make your money.
If you were an animal, what animal would you like to be?
Definitely a jaguar. That's my favorite animal.
Jaguar?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Dude's from Jacksonville, of course.
No, I know, but sleek. Jaguars are such a beautiful, beautiful cat. I mean, they really, really are. All right, you mentioned about the watermelon farming back that was a part of your family's ancestry. When was the first time you ever were old enough and strong enough to pick up what was a nice-sized watermelon?
It would have been, what was I? I was about, I want to say 8. We were over in Meigs, Georgia. That's where my dad's side is from. Little country town, really not even big. It's right across from Thomasville, Georgia. And I was out there with my great uncles, and they're showing me the farm. Watermelon right there, you got to plop that sucker up. That's the only way to do it.
Those things can be a load, though. Hey, you could tweak it back if you're not careful back when you were younger, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You definitely have to have a straight back. It helps with squats, too. Perfect technique.
I've been through there. When I went to school in Tallahassee, so driving up through Georgia, I just looked at a picture. I very much recognize this. So, yes, I wasn't there long, clearly, but I do recognize it, man. That is a very, very small country town. Keaton, I know that you haven't gotten to see a lot of the new guys totally yet because you've got some coming in, but have you been impressed? What have you noticed about some of the new guys that have come into the squad here in the spring?
Definitely. The freshman, his name is Bo Anu. I was his host, and I got that joker to commit. He's a dog. He's killing it in the weight room, off the field, great kid. And then on the field, he's understanding the playbook really well. He looks really smooth, and it has his breaks. And I wouldn't be surprised if he earns himself some playing time this year. I think he can definitely benefit the team so far as our younger freshman that's definitely on the come-up right now.
So
transfer-wise, I'm super –
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
Transfer-wise, another safety, super impressed with Devin Turner. Comes in, works hard. He came from Northwestern. He was a Big Ten All-American, so I wouldn't expect less. But great cat, works hard, good off the field.
So the coaching staff has been tweaked a little bit too, and part of that at the linebacker position. How have you seen much of a change with Carson Hall? And I know different linebacker spots, and Paul Gonzalez now a part of the secondary. Have you noticed much? Is it just too early? Because they're right now, it's more, as you mentioned, Vic Valoria and his staff.
Yes, sir. So it's a little different because I got a chance to meet with Coach Gonzalez great guy, great energy. His reputation, I mean, look at his resume. He's developed tons of guys, put a lot of guys out there into the league. He knows what he's doing. Coach Hall, I haven't actually had much time to talk to with yet. He's a little more on the quiet side. So I'll probably say we give it a couple more months and I'll have a couple more conversations with him. I'm sure we'll connect and then I'll be able to relay more information there. But super excited about having those guys on the staff. Just excited about what they're going to teach our guys in each of their respective rooms and excited to develop further and become a better defense.
We asked earlier, and thank you for your time, and you've given us a nice chunk of it, Keaton, but with how the season after that, what was 2-4, and then, of course, the year before you got here, they weren't good at all, 3-9. What was it like to feel that momentum, that surge after the off week, after beating Tech and getting on that run, despite the bowl game? What was it like to know the momentum was building and you guys were in a pretty good run?
Great question. I would have to say, and I'm sure we all understand this in here, the greatest feeling as a man is when you prove another man wrong, right? And so we went in the course. We were 2-4. Everybody told us what we couldn't do. They told us our coach was going to get fired. They talked about who's hitting the portal and who's that. And when we messed around and turned that thing around, became a team, worked as one, there was no better feeling than proving all the man who said we couldn't do it wrong. It's the greatest feeling in life.
So you guys did hear the chatter, right, because of Coach Aranda and what was going on the year before that, and so that you had some of that outside noise. How much can you let that infiltrate what you do, or is that just you knew it was there?
We knew it was there. We understood the mission. I already understood the mission when I first signed. I knew it was going to be a challenge. If I wasn't up for the challenge, I wouldn't have came to Baylor. There's a reason I came here. God told me to come here. There's a reason I'm in front of the people who I'm in front of, and the people who are influencing me, and vice versa. And we understood what it was. You have to use that noise as energy. Otherwise, it'll overcome you, and a lot of negative things can happen. You just have to look on the positive and focus on using the negative to get you to the positive.
Well, you could tell that you have that ability, personality. You were damn good. You had statistically one hell of a year in your first year coming in from Northeast Community Junior College. So thanks for your time, Keaton. We appreciate it. Enjoy this early part of, I guess you could say, the spring semester, even though it's cold as hell outside, and what you guys are going through. Are you chomping at the bit to get to practice and just get to practice again in those 15 workouts you'll get?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Love. I'm always thinking about football. I can never turn it off. Just even watching the games when I was at home for those couple of weeks with my pops, it's like, man, I'm ready to get back out there. I don't even know where I'm home right now.
There's a lot of talk about the schedule in the spring because, because of the transfer portal, things like that. But just as a guy that's playing the sport right now, and you're in your, third year? Is that right? Third year of college football. What would you say as a player? Forget about what commissioners or fans or ADs or whatever say. How would you like to see college football change, if anything, when it comes to spring practices, off-season workouts, spring games, scrimmage, whatever else you want to call it?
I'm an old school guy, right? So how I grew up playing the game and the way I was taught the game and how I watched the game since a young age was fast, physical, and play with reckless abandonment, right? So you have to be physical 24/7. You have to go full speed 24/7. It's the only way to get better. You can't get better if you don't go fast. So I understand that college has changed a lot, especially with the playoff schedule and how late it runs. But if you want to get better, you have to practice at it. You have to hit at it. And that's the only way you're going to get as close to real game reps as possible. And that's what this time is for now. So if some people, might change their schedule, might not do a game, might maybe have less practices, that's up to them, right? But from my understanding how we're doing it, we're going to go hard, we're going to have fun, we're going to compete, and then go from there.
Hey, man, great talking to you, Keaton. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks. Love your passion, and also your skill set's really good, too. Have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all. I appreciate you guys.
You too. Keaton Thomas, Baylor linebacker, with us on 365 Sports. He came in first year. He knew the situation. He mentioned that with what Baylor was like and had himself statistically a very, very good year. And you can kind of feel that. Sometimes you can be a talker, but you don't back it up. It looks like he backs it up and also at the same time as a talker. They need a handful of him, others. And the fact that he helped get a guy to commit because of his influence, that's not a bad deal either. All right, when we come back, we're going to look at Iowa State's football schedule 2025. John McClain with Paul Catalina, Hall of Fame columnist, and also the top 5. We appreciate your time today as always, and this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels in Waco just reduced every one of their pre-owned cars in the inventory. All right, now, that's what I bought back in the May of 2020 when I went over there to look at a car. My Tahoe finally just crashed and burned 67,000 miles. I wish I could still be driving that, but it was time. The heart ran out in the engine. And I bought a pre-owned. I was there looking. I didn't have my mind set on anything in particular, new or pre-owned. And then all of a sudden, AJ was walking me around the lot, and I looked over to it. I was like, what is that over there? I like the front grille of what I bought, the Ford Explorer, a pre-owned car. The deal was fantastic. 2023 Buick Envision, leather seats, power sunroof, blackout package. One of the prettiest little Buicks you'll ever see at $25,995 plus tax, title, and license. I have told you about the Jeep Grand Cherokee or Jeep Grand Wagoneer. 2023 Series 2 loaded with amenities such as first-class ride reduced to $60,550. And, of course, that does not include, so you have plus tax, title, and license. Pre-owned lineup, so diversified, different inventory with all types of makes and models. 2025 Honda CRX EXLL with only 6,000 miles, or a 2024 Kia Sorento loaded with amenities, leather seats, sunroof, and so much more with only 15,000 miles. You keep going, the 2024 Subaru Forester all-wheel drive with 20,000 miles, clean, nice pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot right now, and they reduced the price on all of the pre-owned cars. Rigorous inspection. Hurry today. Go by Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Ted Teague, General Manager and CEO David Gray. He's a sales manager that handles all of what you need. 340, Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
What a year it was for Iowa State. Did not win the Big 12 title, but they made themselves a great run. First time with ever 10-plus wins, 11-3 overall. And so they return for 2025, and, of course, expectations are sky high with Matt Campbell. Craig Smoak, the 2025 Cyclone schedule.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, they finished 11-3 last year. Not that every year carries over, but it was a historic year. First time past 10 wins or getting to 10 wins, and then to surpass that by beating Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and being able to be right in the middle of what is probably the most well-known non-major bowl game now at this point, just social media-wise, I would say. It's definitely the one that markets the best and gets the most out of its marketing and just its whole atmosphere. So they were able to be the champions of the Pop-Tarts Bowl and beat a very good Canes team. Big top 15 win there, finished in the top 15, and runners up in the Big 12, as you mentioned. So it was a really banner year for Iowa State. But, man, that Big 12 championship game, I don't even know how much we really talked about at the time because that was December, and I don't know. But just, wow, to get there and to have that opportunity again, and then for Arizona State to be just so dominant. I was not expecting that. 45-19. That was just crazy to me how lopsided that was. So that left a bit of a bad taste in your mouth, but it was a big deal to get there, big deal to then go and beat Miami to close out with a win. So how do they carry all that over? It starts with Rocco Becht. I mean, he's back. We're not going to get into the breakdowns on the team. That's for later on this year, but they do have a good number of starters back on both sides, and so they will open up with a unique first game, unique for them and another Big 12 opponent, as it will be conference play right out of the gates. In Ireland, the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, Iowa State and K-State, Farmageddon over on the Emerald Isle, and that is how things open up, and that right there is one of the more unique games every year in college football because you start earlier, you have that platform kind of to yourself, that spotlight to yourself, but man, you talk about ratcheting it up. I mean, playing K-State to start the year, conference game to start the year, overseas, that's just a really interesting way to kick things off, and so that's how they will begin things, and that alone will be a mighty fine test right out of the gates.
Yeah, I can't wait for that game. I enjoy watching it almost every year. Last year notwithstanding.
And the year before.
Yeah. Yeah. Soki and I have been victims of that. Craig, I
was thinking about Iowa State, Kansas State. I was like, what bothered you about that? No, you're talking about the Ireland game.
The Ireland game. Craig, I really hope for your sake and Garrett that LSU and Oklahoma never play in that thing because it's as excited as you get about it, it's just going to let you down. So for Iowa State and Kansas State fans, I'm going to warn one of you. You are going to be so mad they went to Ireland after being so excited they were in Ireland. but it's great. It's a great way it's a great showcase for the Big 12 to start the season with two of its better teams, one of its biggest rivalries starting off the year, and it seems both fan bases are fired up about it. So.
Yeah, so it's an interesting start. They've been playing for over 100 years. First time, obviously, to play that game overseas, and so it's very clear. Everybody listen, this is a conference game. Mm-hmm. It's a conference game. This counts towards the Big 12 standings. So just making that clear so there's not confusion because we had some of those crossovers last year. But this is a conference game that will count right out of the gates. So Iowa State's won the last two with K-State. They won 4 out of the last 5 against K-State, so that'll be a big game for both. And talk about your difficult schedules right out of the gates. Well, they turn around from the Ireland trip, and they will get a little bit of a a break at some point because they will technically have 3 bye weeks. So that is one of the unique parts about their schedule since they do start early. But after starting,
does it look like it? Am I looking at the different thing? It looks like they play the next week against South Dakota.
they do, but there will be 3 bye weeks eventually.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So that is one of the unique parts of that schedule because they start a week earlier than everybody. So they do play the following week after Ireland, which will be interesting because – I mean, all that travel, how does that come into play? There's not a big break. So you go Saturday to Saturday, come back from Ireland, and you play South Dakota, who is no pushover whatsoever. So that is right after that. And then you close out your non-conference schedule with Iowa and the Cyhawk game. Or no, you don't close out your non-conference schedule because K-State's conference game. So you go South Dakota, and then you have the following week Iowa at home, Cyhawk game. And then you have your final non-conference game at Arkansas State. So that's kind of unique, too. Like, this schedule, when you really, boil it down, it's just kind of bizarre. I mean, really, you're going to Arkansas State. You're opening conference play, Farmageddon in Ireland. You got 3 bye weeks, South Dakota at FCS semifinalists, the Cyhawk game. Dude, they're going to be worn the hell out, and I don't know if they're going to be worse for wear, but they are going to be battle-tested after the first month of the college football season.
I mean, your 2 biggest rivals, the 2 biggest ones they have in the first 3 weeks, that is –
Yep.
And look, that might wind up being a good thing because you can just keep that mindset going of it's rivalry week, we hunt, until you get to the – South Dakota and Arkansas State may get some of that smoke. Because you're just going to have to keep locked into it. But that's going to be hard, going overseas, coming back,
no break, no buffer week, nothing.
No break, no bye week. I mean, FSU and Georgia Tech both had a bye week last year. FSU stayed in Ireland for a couple days and, did the things they planned on doing afterwards. This is going to be coming right back and doing all that. It's going to be tough. If you're 2-2 out of that, that's not a big surprise, but it's not the end of your season. It's just you could easily be 2-2 out of that because that is a hammer to start it out.
Yeah, that's really difficult. You got any thoughts on that first month?
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, that Dublin game is kind of just weird. Northwestern beating Nebraska, that wasn't a huge upset. It was an upset. FSU losing to Georgia Tech in the end made sense because Georgia Tech was better. But that can be a drain, and the fact they're playing the very next week is surprising to me. But, they knew that when they took the game. And they're getting a game that's at a neutral site. Remember what Jamie Pollard mentioned, that would be a game in Manhattan, Kansas. So to me, that is a trade-off in a good way because even though that's a short trip, it's a neutral game. And I got a feeling Iowa State, Kansas State fans are going to load that place up.
Yep, so there you go. There's the first month. Ireland against K-State, FCS semifinalist South Dakota, Cyhawk against Iowa, on the road to Arkansas State. So then they get the first of 3 bye weeks, and after that much-needed break, I would imagine, who knows what they are, 2-2 at worst, you would say. If they're 4-0, then holy cow, watch out. But they will get finally a break, and then we'll return to Big 12 play, have Arizona at home. Then they will play at Cincinnati, so they'll go and take on the Bearcats there. Then they have Colorado also on the road, so that's the only back-to-back road games they have is that Cincinnati, Colorado, October 4th, October 11th. But, yeah, then they have their second of what will be 3 bye weeks after that little 3-game stretch of Arizona at home and then trips to Cincy and Colorado. So that breaks it up into the second segment there for them.
That one, at least you give them a little bit of a time to ratchet back up if everything, again, chalk. Mm-hmm. If it's chalk, you have a nicer middle there. But then again, they don't do any favors on the backside of that. So this is where you got to go 3-0 in these, to me, to stay in it. You can't lose any single one of these games unless you're 4-0 out of the gate. But even then, to stay in the reasonable playoff discussion, I think you got to go 3-0 in those.
Yeah, so after Colorado, they have their second bye week, and then it is to your home field to come back for the third time. It's a weird schedule, man, with all the breaks, but you come back after that second bye week, and you get BYU at home. It ought to be a hell of a game. You turn around, you get Arizona State also at home, so back-to-back home games against two of the better teams from last season at least. And then you're at TCU on Saturday, November the 8th, and that's another thing I'll mention, all Saturday games. Every game's a Saturday game for Iowa State, so nothing in terms of Thursdays, Fridays, none of that. But, yeah, that's the next chunk, and so this part 3 of 4, which they're a unique Ireland game, but – yeah, you get BYU, Arizona State, and at TCU. So, man alive, like you miss Baylor on here, who you think will be pretty good. Texas Tech, who you think will be pretty good. Beyond that, though, man, BYU, Arizona State, K-State. I mean, you're playing a lot of the good teams on paper, and this is an on-paper exercise. But, yeah, there you go. There's the third wave, BYU, Arizona State, and then 2 TCU, and then your final break before the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I just think that – if you come through that middle one all right, you got to hit the ground running because you are playing also, returning quarterback to start off the season. An improvement at quarterback at Iowa with Gronowski, who's coming in there. Returning quarterback in Noah Fafita. Yeah. Returning quarterback in Brendan Sorsby. Yep. New quarterback, then Retzlaff, Levitt, and Hoover in 3 weeks. That's a lot of experience on the offensive side of the ball.
That might be the 3 best quarterbacks. I mean, arguably. I mean, Avery Johnson or Sawyer Robertson, but those 3 are solid quarterbacks.
Yeah, and they've got Rocco Becht, who's one of the best too. But it's gonna be tough all the way through. Like they have 2 teams on the schedule in the Big 12, Colorado and Oklahoma State, that will have new quarterbacks. All the rest have seen them before, know them. There's experience on the team now. Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State probably bring back the most from a year ago, so they're probably better prepped than most. But even still, I mean, this is a battering ram of a schedule in 2 parts. So,
well, the games with BYU and Arizona State being at home, and obviously Kansas, but that does give you. Well, they do have the long trip. Arkansas State's not long. Cincinnati's not really that far. I don't think it is from where Ames is. Colorado's a little bit of a jaunt, but they're pretty much contained in the middle of the country.
Ames to Cincinnati is 9 hours.
Is it? Well, that's in an airplane.
I think we all forget just kind of the Midwest because we're not as well versed with it of just how far some things are. Because on the map, it maybe doesn't look like they're that far.
But a charter flight.
Yeah, they're going to charter, but it's still, if you're a fan, that's a 9-hour drive if you're trying to go to that game. So it's not next door. But.
Yeah, they can't like the Iowa game is what kick-started this year, right?
Yeah.
Well,
they've had success in that game as of late. That's a big.
Think about beating 2 teams that are huge rivals if you can the first 3 weeks of the season with K-State and Iowa.
Well, that's the goal. Yep. I mean, that's what you hope to do, and that's what you'll need to do. But then you finally come back after your 3rd bye week, and you have the 4th and final chapter of the regular season, and you will play 2 games to close it out: home against Kansas, and then you will travel to Stillwater on November 29th. And close up shop against Oklahoma State. And at that point, I don't know where they will be. It's very hard for me looking at this, and we're doing on paper here with a lot of blanks not filled in yet. But I'm not rolling back 10-win predictions again. I feel like, 8's probably a fair thing to say as far as optimistic. I haven't gone through game by game. But last year they got off to the terrific start and dropped a couple in the middle of the year. One again, had that Arizona State loss in the Big 12 championship game. They were pretty solid throughout. It's harder to see that with this scheduling. But who knows? I mean, we have no idea who's going to be better or worse or any of that. But on paper, this is a tough-ass schedule, man. Yeah. This is a tough-ass schedule where you basically play the majority of the quote-unquote teams that are expected to be better. Now, maybe you luck out on not playing West Virginia. Maybe West Virginia ends up being really good, or Baylor or somebody like that. But you're going to get K-State. You're going to get Arizona State. You're going to get TCU. This is going to be a real test for them, and a lot of traveling, with the overseas game to start things off with. But there's your schedule for Iowa State, so quite the challenge ahead.
If you make it all the way through to the Big 12 championship game, it's highly likely you're going to see one of those tough teams that you already beat again, or one of the tough teams that you didn't have to. So say it's Tech's year. You didn't have to see him. Well, you got to play him in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, Tech or
Baylor,
or Baylor. Because you play BYU, you play Arizona State, you play TCU, you play Kansas, you play Kansas State. So, yeah, I mean, somebody that maybe we're not thinking of that's better than expected could throw a wrench in that, and, yeah, you play them instead in the Big 12 championship game. But outside of that, like, getting to the Big 12 championship game, if they do that for a second straight year, will be pretty impressive on paper, because it's hard to kind of see the same type of wins from last year carrying over to this season, and that's not how it works anyways. But you have the starting quarterback. You have the longevity of your head coach and just the system and all of those
exactly.
things.
Yeah, the culture, the system, it's entrenched in the way they go about doing their things. You said if there's a Big 12 team that's better than we think, which means that probably two of those teams on that list right there, no matter home or away, will be a part of that just because of the trends.
This schedule could look differently. It could look a lot easier if you were to see some of those teams, like K-State's not quite as good, but we won't know that in week one. And so over time, maybe that's the case. But, yeah, certainly on paper, it is a tough schedule with a lot of intriguing matchups. And I think that let's see. I mean, the Ireland road trip's probably what everybody's saving up for, right? But going to Cincy, going to Boulder, Fort Worth's a good trip for Iowa State fans, and Stillwater's a great little venue, although I don't know what that'll be like by the end of the year. I mean, is Gundy still in charge? Like, we don't know, but, yeah, there you go. So Iowa State, hard to see them replicating last year's success in the regular season, but on paper, that's what we're looking at. Could be a different story when they actually roll the ball out in real life.
Would you take right now with that schedule the Cyclones a repeat of 11-3?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't know how to make it clear. Hell no. I mean, yeah, no, I'm not taking them to do 11-3 again. I mean, I won't rule it out entirely.
I think you guys misunderstood me. Would you take it? If you're Iowa State,
it's the best year you've ever had. Yeah, of course you would.
Yeah, but you got to start putting those together somewhere.
Okay, but I get that, but this is like, I mean, you just did that. So it's not as though, like, you're trying to carry this over the course of the decade. I get what you mean, but we also have to be realistic that they'd never won 10 games before. They won 11. So, yeah, you would take that playing in the Big 12 championship game. Now, if you did that 3 or 4 years in a row and you never win the Big 12 and you lose at least 3 games every year, then I could see the fans going, hey, like, we're kind of stuck here, but you just did this. So, no, you are on the horizon. You're still ascending. So, yeah, I think you would take matching that, because that means you're now – doing
consistent.
something twice in a row. Yeah, now you're consistent.
Never won double-digit wins ever, and you had the best season in Baylor history was 12-2. And remember what happened to them? It's easier said than done. 11-3, their best season. I think they'd take that right now. Matt Campbell would say no, obviously. Jamie Pollard would say no, but down deep inside they'd go, hell yeah, man, we got to stack these babies on top of each other rather than few and far between. All right, coming up, around the corner, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great customer service, great deals, and great just offerings on all the vehicles they have on display right now. And right now, all 2024 cars and trucks are priced to move. You can save $4,500 on a new 2025 Buick Encore GX. You can save $3,000 on a Buick Enclave for qualified non-GM owners. So thousands in savings there. And this all goes on and coincides with the Love Your Truck Savings Event, because it is time to love your truck and SUV again at the Richard Carr Love Your Truck Savings Event going on now. So I mentioned $4,500 off of 2025 Buick Encore GXs, $3,000 on Buick Enclaves. They've also got various other offerings from the Cadillac line and also the Buick line, like the Buick Envista, a car and driver's editor's choice. It's in stock right now at Richard Carr, and it's under $24,795. So plenty from the Buick lineup to take advantage of during the Love Your Truck Savings Event going on right now. Richard Carr is locally owned, locally run, has been a part of the community for over 40 years, doing business in Waco with a dealership that gives back to Baylor and the Waco community. That's good business for you as well. So deal with the people you can count on. Go visit them at richardcarr.com. Swing by in person, but whatever you do, take advantage of the thousands in offerings on a variety of different vehicles right now over at the Love Your Truck Savings Event at Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. but it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McClain County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
John McClain, Hall of Fame NFL columnists, with us here. And I decided, John, we were going to give you a new title. I texted you this last night of raconteur, Renaissance man, man about the world. Does that work as well, since you are putting writing at least to the side a little bit right now?
Yeah, I'm focused on doing broadcasts and working on film documentaries, one about the Phillips family, Bum, Wade, and West, and another one about the Prairie View Interscholastic League high school football in Texas before integration. There's 8 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame who played in the PVIL, and only 3 still living are me and Joe Green, Kenny Houston, and Emmett Thomas. We've interviewed them. And all in all, we'll have worked on it about a year, and it's an unbelievable story, and I'm learning so much more than I even thought I knew about it. And I'm happy with this introduction, Waco native. And by fact, Paul, I was in Waco this past weekend for the funeral of one of my oldest friends, Bill Goss, who I met in 3rd grade at Crestview Elementary, one of the best baseball players Waco has ever produced. Bill fought a battle for 16 years, 5 different cancers, and he died with his wife Sandy and his family around him peacefully. And he and I were diehard Astros fans. We listened to the first game in history in '62 on a radio on my parents' porch. And so I wanted to say condolences to Bill's family and friends. He and I played Little League together, teenage baseball together. Then I discovered girls, which kept me from playing center field for the Astros. And Bill played at Richville High School, MCC, and Baylor. And I was glad when I started working at the Trib for Dave Campbell and Alice Biddle, I got to cover some of his games, and I got to speak at his service. And I saw a lot of people, Paul, I haven't seen in a long time.
John, Did Bill and Butch Henry overlap at all?
Oh yeah, Butch was in our little league, Northwestern League. Bill and I played for Shell Oil. Butch was the coach for First Federal. Pat Zachary pitched for Dealers Electric. Pat and Bill both died within 6 months of each other because of cancer. Pat, to me, along with Arthur Rose, the best baseball players Waco's ever produced. And I asked Bill after Pat's service at the Hall of Fame, I asked him, I said, did you ever think about doing like Pat, trying to get on with the team, going to the minors, see if you could work your way up? Because Bill was a great first baseman and a good hitter. And he said, it's my dream. He said, one time Zach came home from the minors and I called him and I said, let's go up to Richfield, go up to Cage. I don't want to hit it here. And Pat said, okay, I'll meet you at such and such time. And when Pat was a little late, he walks up and he says, who are they, looking at the outfield? Bill said, well, I brought a couple of friends to shag my balls when I hit them. And Pat's going to the mound and said, you ain't going to need them. And so Pat throws 5 pitches past Bill. Bill said he didn't see him. He heard him. He foul tipped one, and he walked away. And as he's walking away, Pat Zachary goes, where are you going? And he said, I'm done. And he said, no, you're not. I'm just getting warmed up. And so Bill went into banking and investment industries and did very, very well in Waco. And like Pat, he was a proud Wacoan who had so many family and friends. And well, like I said, we went back to the 3rd grade.
Well, John, I'm certainly condolences to the Goss family. I've met Bill a couple of times in the past. I was familiar with him a little bit, probably through Steve Fallon and you and all of that. But John, in the NFL, Zach Martin has retired. It is kind of challenging for offensive linemen to be first ballot Hall of Famers. And you're on that committee. He's as good as there's been at guard, especially in this generation. Like maybe 2 guys kind of measure up like on the same level. Quentin Nelson, one of them. Where do you see his career when it comes to, I know he will be a Hall of Famer, but will it take him a couple passes just because, Randall McDaniel didn't get in on the first pass either. And that's really statistically, if you look where he's most comparable to.
Well, first of all, Paul, he'll be eligible in 5 years if he doesn't make a comeback, and he's still 34. He still could have played. I know he was coming off an operation, but when I look at all his stats and see how impressive they were, especially all pro. Pro Bowl doesn't carry as much weight as all pro. And he had, I think, 3rd or 4th most in Cowboys history. And I believe, now it depends on who else is on the ballot in 5 years, but right now I'd say Zach Martin is going to get serious consideration on the first ballot. It's really hard for guards because guards don't like to hear this, but they're not important as tackles and not as coveted as tackles. But man, could he play? And of course, he played his whole career with the Cowboys. And so I believe if he doesn't get in the first year, which I believe he will, depending on the competition, I'm certain he'll get in on the second.
For the Cowboys, this is look, they have so many positions they need to address in this offseason. Running back, guard, wide receiver, 2 linebackers, defensive tackle, probably cornerback. There's nowhere that they don't have a problem. Do you think that this elevates guard in their mind of what they need to address first, or is it almost because they need so much, they just have to address what they can the best ways they can?
Yeah, no, you don't ever address guard first unless that's the only position keeping you from either you're on the precipice of the playoffs, making the playoffs, or you're on the precipice of the Super Bowl because you can get guards. You don't need to draft them high. And I think what the Cowboys need more than anything next season is Dak Prescott to stay healthy. And they'd like to get another wide receiver. But I think we saw this year what a great running back can do for an offense. You know, a great running game is a quarterback's best friend. Plus, it keeps the opponent on the bench. And if they get a shot at Ashton Jeanty, and if you're a Cowboy fan, if they get Ashton Jeanty, you're going to say, "Well, boy, I'm glad they didn't sign Derrick Henry because they might have won 3 or 4 more games." And Jerry Jones could say, "Well, this was the plan all along." But the fact is, it's like a great quarterback can make other players look good, receivers and tight ends, and even backs out of the backfield. A great running back can make the linemen look good. I watched a lot of games with Ashton Jeanty just to see what the big deal was. And the fact he went to high school at the Cowboys facility and played there, I think that it's a perfect fit. Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, who is my favorite of all the scouts, he's my favorite. He has Jenny Paul, late number 3. Mm-hmm. And if they were to be able to get him in the first round, they should jump on it and never look back and hope they hit home runs in their first few picks. Spend a little money. Cap's going up by as much as $26 million. Don't sit on the money this year because, they're the third best going into the season. They'll be number 3 in the division, and that's not where the Cowboys are used to be picking. If they're not first, they're second, and they got a lot of work to do, and Jerry Jones is going to have to spend some money, which he didn't do last offseason.
There is, they're just adverse to it. John, the Cowboys don't like, and I understand not wanting to, just go out and be how the Browns or the Jaguars are when you have a bunch of cap room, which they don't have a bunch, but they will have some, and fill up the roster with free agents who may or may not work out. But if you can improve at a position, then you should improve at that position no matter how you can. They just don't really see it that way, and I've never understood it.
Well, first of all, they need to get Micah Parsons done. The longer they wait, say Trey Hendrickson of Cincinnati, who had 17.5 sacks, was one of the best defensive players in the league. That's 5.5 more than Parsons. What if Micah Parsons is saying, "I want 30," and Hendrickson gets 32? Then Parsons is going to be 34. So you better do it now, because the sooner you do it, it may look like a lot of money, and people may go, "Oh my God!" But when you wait till later, think how much it's going to cost. They botched that Dak Prescott contract. They botched every contract he's had other than his rookie deal. Every time they could have signed him sooner for less money, and they kept waiting, and I never knew what they were waiting for. Maybe a stork to bring them another one, but it's always backfired on them. And I know Jerry Jones gets a lot of the blame. Stephen Jones runs the show, and Will McClain just got a new contract to stay as their top personnel people. Jerry Jones doesn't just do things that others don't want to do as much as we think it, but a lot of that strategy is not just Jerry, and it needs to change, or they're going to be left behind.
Absolutely, John. The Texans approached this offseason, I guess, a little disappointed with how the season went, but they still made the playoffs. How do you expect to see Nick Caserio address, A, the main issue of protecting C.J. Stroud, and B, dealing with the fact that if you were a wide receiver with this team, you got hurt at least a little bit during the year?
Yeah, every offense. Nico Collins is their best receiver and one of the best in the league. Missed 5 games. He's never been fully healthy. Of course, Stephon Diggs has been one of the most durable receivers in the NFL. Then he blew out his ACL halfway through the year, on his way to close to 100 catches and 1,000 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns. And then Tank Dell, one of the worst injuries I've ever seen. We don't even think he'll be back next year. They can't say that for sure, and they won't say it for sure because we're so far away. But wide receiver is a need. But those 3 guys are a great example. You don't need to use a first-round pick on a receiver. Tank Dell was the 3rd round. Nico Collins, 3rd round. Stephon Diggs was the 5th round. There's a lot of productive receivers who weren't first-rounders. And if they can get their hands on a guard or a center in the first round that they think is worth that pick, take him. If not, they can use another interior defensive lineman because they have 3 tackles, including both starters, whose contracts are up. None of them are great, but they all played well. So I think they're going to fortify the line offensively or defensively. Not sure what they'll do in free agency. And yes, they need another receiver, and they've had injuries at safety the last 2 years, including Jalen Petrie this past season. So they finished 10-7. They blew out the Chargers in the playoffs like they did with the Browns here. Then they lost to Kansas City by 9 on the road. So they've got to get past the second round for the first time in franchise history. And they don't have a lot of money to be doing it with like they did last year. Plus, Derek Stingley Jr., who played great at corner, he's due for an extension.
Okay, John, is Justin Tucker's career over?
Boy, I tell you what, he's got 16 women who have gone public with what he did at the massage parlors. And it wasn't like Deshaun Watson, where he was looking just on Instagram, and it was he and the woman, and he ended up with over 20. Tucker went to resorts. The women told other people. The Baltimore Banner, which is the second paper in Baltimore to the Sun, is just killing the Sun on this story. And they had a story today saying women, 3 of them said the NFL's interviewed them. They're going to interview more. And John Harbaugh, this has been thrown back into his face a lot. He was talking about Watson's situation. He said, we have a 0 tolerance policy. Well, if it's 1 or 2 and you deny it, okay, they're making it up. 5 or 6, it's 16, and there might be more out there. So I'm thinking Tucker's career is over. He should have reached a settlement, but they haven't filed any civil suits yet. They're coming, but not one of them has filed a civil suit. They haven't called Tony Busby and asked him to represent them like he did most of the others, but they have gone public, and it is a sordid situation, especially because of the way he comports himself as very religious, and he is so respected, a man of the community, and now the community, at first, they tend to believe him, but when they start stacking up like this, and they're all different places, and they don't know each other, you got to think, Paul, where there's smoke, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and this is the greatest kicker of all time, statistically. So that's a pretty big loss if you're the Ravens for something that you probably never even thought would ever happen with Justin Tucker.
Well, of course. And you think last year he struggled, and there was a time that he struggled. And I started thinking these stories didn't just appear out of nowhere. They had to try to talk to him. They had to tell him what the situation was. And you talk about a cross to bear for him and his family and everything else. So it is a ugly episode, but I'm guessing it is. Now, Brandon McManus last year had 2 flight attendants say he groped them on flights Jackson when he was with Jacksonville. And usually you reach a settlement and then refuse to talk to the NFL. The NFL has no subpoena power. They can request you and you can say no. You reach a settlement and then all of a sudden you can't do any investigation. McMahon was cut by Washington, and then after it came out that everything had been dropped and he was signed by Green Bay.
What do you think about Kellen Moore and his hires of Doug Nussmeier on offense and now Brandon Staley on defense? And the Saints have a lot of salary cap issues. This is pretty much a restart for them, totally top to bottom. I mean, I would think that Derek Carr is probably even in danger of going, and they start from the bottom up. But what do you think about what he's at least done early on with the major hires?
I think I could hear celebrations in Metairie, Louisiana, when they came out. The cap was going to go up as much as $26 million, and we know it next week. Nobody needs relief like the Saints do, and that's the way it is for them every year. They redo deals, they push it down the road. They need to go ahead like the Broncos, let it come out take it at, be up front with the media and the fans. Look, we're eating this. We're going to have a bad season. Well, the Broncos didn't, even though they ate all of Russell Wilson's cap, and Bo Nix turned out to be so good, and they were able to win last year. Very, very impressive. The Saints, they've asked Derek Carr to take a pay cut. He says no. They could cut him and re-sign him. They could redo his contract. I think Brandon Staley was a good choice as a defensive coordinator. He had hired Kellen Moore, and Doug Nussmeier has worked with Moore, I think, 4 years. And it's funny, he's got the daddy who's working at the Saints and the son who's the quarterback at LSU. And it looks like he's got a good staff. But, Paul, my goodness, that is a bad situation.
Yeah, certainly is. They have got, $47 million over the cap. John, one last thing. Alex Bregman has made the best decision of his life and gone to the Boston Red Sox. I say that as a tried and true Red Sox fan. Your thoughts on the legacy he leaves in Houston?
Well, it's a great legacy. He's one of the greatest players in franchise history, probably one of the top 5, along with Bagwell, Biggio, Altuve, 3rd, Bregman 4th. I'm not sure. Eventually it'll be Alvarez, but he's right up there. And as soon as he got there, he's involved in a unbelievable controversy, nothing having to do with him. He said all the right things. I'll play anywhere you want. Third base, second base, I want to do what's best for the team. They asked Rafael Devers, a longtime third baseman, who's one of the worst third basemen in baseball. He said, no, I'm a third baseman. I'm not moving to first or DH. Well, then the media started blasting him. The fans started blasting him because statistically he's a terrible third baseman. And Bregman's coming off a Gold Glove. And you'd think the manager, Alex Cora, who was here, and at the heart of that scandal, the cheating scandal, one of the orchestrators of it, that he would have had all this worked out before they signed him. But Bregman told the podcast yesterday it was like the last 30 minutes, everybody's gone silent. And then the last 30 minutes, multiple teams were trying to get him. And he didn't say he went to Boston because he got $40 million a year and an opt-out after each year. But, that was it. I can't believe the Red Sox gave him an opt-out after each year. And but he'll hit a lot of doubles off the Green Monster. He'll hit a few home runs, but he's not going to change his launch angle, which he would have to do because his launch angle was for line drives into the Crawford boxes at Daikin Park, which is what Minute Maid's been renamed. And so I think he'll get a lot of doubles. I'll make a prediction right now, Paul. Alex Bregman leads the American League in doubles.
I think so. He bats like .450 all time at Fenway too. So worth it even for a year if that's what happens.
Well, that's his home away from home. And think about it. Every time he came to the plate, he was booed like crazy. And if he can hit that well when he's getting booed, maybe the fans at Fenway need to keep booing him.
Maybe so. All the Raffy Devers fans who are mad, I guess. I think that's a non-issue. I really think that it was kind of created because Devers kind of just stated his case. But I guess we'll see. John McClain, raconteur, filmmaker, so many other things. John, we'll talk to you next week.
Waco native and Sikkim Bears.
John McClain. We'll talk to him next week. This is 365 Sports.
looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's Home Sleep Test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Skip the fees, click the link in the bio, ticketclub.com. So, we are to the end of my best in the draft preview. I will, as we get closer post-combine, do some more draft content for you. But the best 5 specialists. I found a long snapper. Number 5. Long snapper, Austin Bregman, West Virginia. You Mountaineer fans, congratulations. You had a guy who was remarkably efficient over his time. Perfect long snapper in the Justin Snow, LP Ladouceur, nay, even Dale Hellestray vein. Yeah, I know long snappers. That's what I do. I find good long snappers for you, the people. This is the best one in the country, Austin Bregman from West Virginia. Never missed a snap, never had a bad one. Really good downfield on coverage as well. Number 4, let's get punting with Luke Elzinga of Oklahoma. Improved his average by 3 yards this year, up from 42 yards to almost 46 yards, so really almost 4 yards per punt. Big leg, big dude. Can really flip the field on field position, has the ability to boom some 70-yarders. Really, really good, effective punter. Could sneak into day 3 of the draft. Also, somebody who could sneak into day 3 of the draft, Caden Davis of Ole Miss. A big kicker, 6'2", 210, long of 57, only missed 5 kicks this year, and some of those were in the weather. Someone who is going to grow into a really, really efficient, strong kicker. He was a weapon for Ole Miss this year, and again, his long is 57 now, and that's before he's gone to the NFL and gotten that NFL-level coaching. He is an absolute bottle rocket of a kicker, just booming it off that right leg. Number 2, back to punting. Aussie, James Burnett from Alabama also increased his average. He's close to 50 yards per punt this year. Good hang time. Another really big dude, 6'2", 6'3", 225 as a punter, kind of like Rick Tootin. Yeah, I threw back Rick Tootin What's up? Ray Guy, semifinalist here. Does your boy know special teams or does your boy know special teams? I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of creator, but still, it's fun. I'm going to keep doing it. And number one, yeah, it's a homer pick, but there were two bright spots to Florida State's team last year. Keaton Thomas, who you saw on the cornerbacks, and this guy, Ryan Fitzgerald. 13 of 13 on kicks over 50 yards in his career with a career long of 59. I would jump under a bus for this man, especially if he was the kicker of my favorite team. Now, of course, the one team that doesn't really have that problem anymore is the Dallas Cowboys because they have Brandon Aubrey. So maybe I love Brandon Aubrey more than I love Ryan Fitzgerald. I don't know. But 13 for 13 over 50 yards, career long of 59. That's all the NFL needs to hear. He will get a shot. And maybe that shot could be in Baltimore to replace the greatest kicker of all time in Justin Tucker, who might have yanked his way out of the league. I feel that I can say no more after that. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.